I'd like to call the November 1st, 2018 City Council meeting to order, and we are going to have an opening provided by Councilmember Larry Page.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity to be here this night. We're thankful for the blessings of this wonderful city and the surrounding we have and the government that we enjoy. We're thankful for representative government. We're thankful for all those who are attending this night, that their voices can be heard. We ask thee that we'll have thy understanding and spirit to be with us this night, that we'll be able to discuss these items in a civil manner and a way that can be a blessing to the citizens of this area. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. I'd like the audience to rise. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right. We're going to have a little bit of a change on the schedule, and I would like to turn some time over to Davis High School.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Michael Wright, theater teacher at Davis High School. I'm here with some of our newsies today. Give them a round of applause. We're excited to be representing Davis High School and the city of Kaysville. And we're presenting to you today just a small piece of what we're performing starting next week on November 9th through the 17th at Davis High School. We're the first high schools in the country to be performing Disney's Newsies. Give them one more round of applause.
Now is the time to seize the day, stare down the odds and seize the day. Minute by minute, that's how you win it. We will find a way, but let us seize the day. Courage cannot erase our fears. Courage is when we face our fears. Tell those with power, safe in their tower, we will find a way, but let us seize the day.
We've got so much more for you. We're really excited to bring you the show. If you've seen the Broadway musical, it is the exact one was performed on Broadway, and they are absolutely incredible students. We're honored that you would let us have a moment here to show you just a small piece of their talents. Thank you for your commitment to the students at Davis High School and to the arts. Thank you very much, Mayor Witt. You are absolutely a gem for letting us have an opportunity to do this.
Well, thank you. We are so glad to have you. And in honor of your hard work, I would like to read a proclamation. Whereas Kaysville City is the home to Davis High School, the Darts, and whereas the Darts have a storied history as Utah's hometown high school dating back to 1914, and whereas Davis High School has a tradition for excellence in the performing arts, musicals, and stage dramas, and whereas over 80 students, teachers, parents, and volunteers participate in the musical theater department and develop acting, singing, and technical skills in young people, and whereas Davis High School is one of the select few high schools in the state to produce Newsies the musical, and whereas Davis High School Musical Theater Department will perform 8 showings of Newsies the musical at Davis High School Theater in November 2018. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Katie Witt, Mayor of the City of Kaysville in Davis County within the state of Utah, announce that November 9th, 2018 be Newsies Day in the great city of Kaysville. So, thank you. All right. Can we get a quick picture with you guys?
We would love a picture.
All right.
Awesome. Where do you want us?
Right in the front.
Okay.
Come on down.
All right. Thank you all for your time. This is tremendous. Thank you. Dave, you got it? Excellent. I'm sure the principal will really like this too if you guys can give one to him.
Can I get extra credit?
Please, though.
Good?
Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your work. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
We are proud of our Davis High School students. All right. Okay, now we are going to have a department report by Gary Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'd like to start off my report with last year's annual report that we compiled for last year. It's very hard to see. There we go. This is just the employees we have at the Kaysville City Power and Light. I'll go through it real briefly. This is a report of our power systems, broke down in residential, commercial, and industrial. It indicates how many customers we have, kilowatt hours that they use, and the total kilowatt hours we use through that year. This is the growth that we've saw last year. In residential, we saw 2.9% growth. Our load growth was 1.14, and our system energy growth was 1.85. This is another breakdown of from last 2016 to 2017 percentage of load that we incurred. Once again, this is another breakdown in revenue. Broke down into residential, commercial, and industrial. Also, it is the kilowatt hours and also our revenue that we received. This page indicates how many square mileage we have in Kaysville that we service, how many miles we have in transmission and distribution, number of employees, and a number of customers that we serve that are Rocky Mountain Powers. And what that means, we wheel the power across our lines for Rocky Mountain Powers customers. This is our 5 largest people that consume power. As you can see, they're all commercial. It changes from year to year. I think Davis School's been on that list for quite some time, but Smith's is just a new one that just came on this year, or last year, I should say. This is just achievements that we've achieved throughout the year that we like putting in our report. This is just a historical note for past 10 years on how our system's grown and also the number of customers that we've put on our system, and also commercials too, residential and commercial. This here is when we have an outage, we categorize them. This reverts back to our RP3 award that we received in April, I believe it was, this year. With us trying to get that RP3 award, we had to identify each category on the outage that occurs to us. There's some that's unknown, a lot of birds and stuff like that. As you can see, our schedule outages were up because we had a lot of schedule outages last year due to our upgrading their system from 2400 to 7200. But it just give you guys the example of what we see on outages. This here is our system reliability report. We send those numbers off to the outage report. We send off to APPA, which is American Public Powers. Something. Anyway, it just indicates what our reliability is towards our customers, and it has, I believe, it goes back clear back to 1998. And then this is the award that I referred to earlier, RP3. We're very pleased of receiving this award. It took us quite some time to get all our documentations and everything we needed to even be considered to be looked at for this award. So we're very pleased on this, and I had to throw it in there. That concludes the report on that. I'd just like to mention a couple items that last staff report I talked about was our pole testing program. I'd like to say this will be the last time I report on our pole testing program. We've completed our pole testing, all 2,900 poles. Out of those poles, we found 120 poles that indicated that they were bad. We have replaced all of them except for 4, and they are in the near future replacement. And then I'd like to give a little bit of update on our advanced metering program. That is in the process. We were able to do our pilot area, our test area. That included 300 meters, and that is running very well. It is doing amazing things that we believe is going to help us in the long run. We are scheduled to receive another 1,000 meters, hopefully sometime this month, and continue to receive meters on an annually basis. Our project goal of completion is hopefully next September. Hopefully we will be completed, but that's all due to our workload and how many employees we can get out there to change our old meters out. So it is running very well. We're excited to get this up and going and be a great benefit. And that concludes my report. Any questions?
Well done. All right, Councilmember Gurn.
So the new meters completely replace the old meters. They're not like an add-on radio or anything. They're completely new meter.
And completely replace the meters. Yeah.
And the new meters, are they capable of, if someone wants to put a generator in the future, hook in, battery storage or something, do they facilitate that?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Page.
Yeah, just a question. It was hard to read it because it's so small, but it looks like to me that I guess our usage on amount of customers grew like 2.8% or something like that, but the power usage was only like 1.6% more or something from 16 to 17. Does that sound right?
And there's a lot of numbers in there. I have to.
Which one what I saw there, what it looked like to me though is our growth was higher than actual consumption. I'm just wondering, do we know why that is? Is it because of more efficiency that people have, or our lights, or?
Yes, it exactly that. It's the efficiency of the appliances, the lights, the LED lights, and everything else like that. So that factors into the consumption or usage of power, even though our growth is more than what our consumption was or usage was. That's an all indication of, well, I don't get, yeah. But yes, you're right, yeah.
All right, well, appreciate that, thanks.
Any other questions? Questions? Okay. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
Did I mention this report is on our website under the Power Department? So
Thank
anybody
you.
wants to look at it, they
Absolutely.
can look at it.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Declarations of conflicts of interest. Anybody have any conflicts of interest on the agenda tonight? Okay. Thank you. All right. Now we'll move on to consent items. Does anybody want to pull anything from consent tonight? No. I'd entertain a motion to move the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion that we move the consent items, minutes from September 6th, 2018, and minutes from October 4th, 2018.
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember DeCare, seconded by both Councilmember Barber and Councilmember Page. We'll go with Councilmember Barber this time. All right. Councilmember Adams.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on to action items. So how we do this was that we will have a presentation, and if we could, Shane, if you could present, can we explain all of them at once? Yeah. And then we'll have public comment after that, and then the council will discuss. All right? Okay.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be brief, too. As we've talked about this a lot, I think we first engaged with the applicants about this project in March of 2017, so this has been well over a year and a half of various discussions and something I hope you're very familiar with. You'll notice, as Mayor, you just asked if we could address these items together. You'll notice there are 3 action items, all surrounding the annexation. We are looking for 3 separate motions tonight, so we need 3 separate actions from you as a body. The first item is the agreement, and we have already adopted an agreement, but the agreement needed to be tweaked. The main change there was just the change of ownership, as the applicants have either now or soon will be closing on the property. So we needed to change the applicants from the previous owner to the current owner. The second item is the annexation itself. So this is something that we haven't done yet. This is what everybody's obviously been waiting for, and what the public hearings were about and all the discussions up till today. And then the third item is the preliminary plat. This was forwarded to us by the Planning Commission with an approval. When we get to that item, you may want to know a little bit more about that. If you do, we have not only the applicants here, but some of their developers. Of course, Mr. Gibson here would be happy to enlighten you a little bit about the Planning Commission discussion if there's any questions about that. But that's what we're looking for, and of course we're here to answer any other questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to go into public comment. So the first person I have signed up is Chalet and or Chris Trujillo, one or the other, not both. Come on up. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you for reviewing our project and your communication with us over this past year and a half and just recently. It's so good to be back tonight. We've looked forward to this meeting for almost 2 years. We appreciate your service to the community, and also would like to thank the staff who has met with us countless times, and we've been in so many meetings with them, and they have been so good to work with, and we're so appreciative. We have had at least 4 city council meetings. We've had 3 planning commission meetings related to this project. We would like to point out a few items related to the history of the project. slides. My slides. You could maybe go to the first slide. On May 23, 2018, the City Council approved the annexation agreement related to the proposed annexation. The agreement was signed by the mayor. We are currently asking for minor modifications to the annexation agreement, including for the signature pages to be modified to reflect the change in ownership of the property and to request a PRUD overlay. The current approved annexation agreement allows for an R18 zone and 95 total units. Our concept before you has come in with 90 units. There are also 2 existing homes. The total acreage of the proposed development is 40.5 acres, and the density works out to be approximately 2.27 units per acre, including 2.7 acres of open space. We have included a variety of lot sizes. At the request of some of the neighbors, we agreed not to build townhomes. Some of them suggested homes that catered to the active adult community. We are thrilled to partner with Ovation Homes, one of the leading builders of active adult communities. A large portion of the land will be developed as an active adult, single-family, single-level, 55 and older community. Compass Holdings will develop the upper portion of the land, which will include single-family custom homes. We're excited to bring this development to Kaysville City, and we thank you for your service and consideration. And
That's great.
okay,
Thank you.
And Brad will talk more about Ovation Homes.
Oh, great. Thank you. Brad Frost.
Nice to be before you. I'm Brad Frost. I'm the owner of Ovation Homes. Happy to be here. And I'll be really brief and just give you, I think you've seen some of our packet already. But we're excited to be in Kaysville and East Kaysville and to be able to provide some housing for our clients in this area. And if you could go to the next slide. Keep going. Keep going. Next one. See, we're just flying through this. Okay. Just real quick, I wanted to tell you a quick story. We had a situation on a subdivision and that we had done in Layton. And this particular individual, it's been there probably a couple years, and she wanted to move to St. George for some family reasons. So she got ready to put her house up for sale, and she probably paid $290 to $310 2 or 3 years ago, and she called the HOA president to let him know, and he said, well, don't do that. I have a list of people that have called on a weekly basis that will purchase your home. So within a week, she had a contract, and she sold it for $450,000 3 years later. And that's the type of scenario we're finding. There's the demographic of the baby boomers is just starting. And if you look at, you can go to the next slide. If you look, we're just barely tipping the scale. And if we go into Kaysville, the next slide, we'll find that in Kaysville there's approximately, and I'm guessing, so if I'm wrong you can tell me, but on the stuff that we've found, approximately 30,000 citizens. Approximately 20% of those are 55 and older, which means there's 5,500 to 6,000 residents that are 55 and older. And right now in Kaysville, there are 125 to 150 units that satisfy that group of people. We believe that number will be closer to 25% in the next few years. And so there's a real need to be able to satisfy and retain the citizens within Kaysville City to stay. We had a situation in another city where they were losing 61% of their seniors because there wasn't the type of housing for them. And so this will make a small dent, but it'll also give them a choice to be on the east side, and also we have some stuff we'll be presenting on the west side as well later on in a few months. So we're excited about it. Just last case in point, one of the biggest things that always comes up is traffic. national average for single-family home trips per day are 11. In Utah, that's more, but we're just using the national average. The study for active adults is 3.71, and those trips in 3.71 are not done during peak hours. So it's a huge difference in traffic. And again, we're happy to be here, happy to be in front of you, and happy to answer any questions later on.
All right, thank you. Allison Frost? Do we have an Allison Frost here?
I'm here, but I didn't sign up.
Oh, okay. That's okay. I won't make you.
So I am from the Frost family that previously owned this property, and from what I understand, there has not been representation from my family here, and I don't know whether there have been attempts to surmise our feelings, but clearly this transaction has gone through and our family is supportive of it. I am one of the owners of a home that will still be in this property, and I look forward to what opportunities that will be. I look forward to not plowing that road myself or my uncle doing it. And as far as I've heard the term high density housing thrown around a lot for this, and I grew up in Salt Lake, and for me, this is far from high density housing. I know it's high density compared to 2 houses on 40 acres, but it seems very reasonable, and I know that the developers have been very cognizant of those desires to keep it more neighborhood and not get it too busy. So,
all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Number 4, Toslia O'Grady or Tosha? I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Hi, Tasha O'Grady.
Tasha.
Yeah, of course. Totally fine. As a direct neighboring property of the proposed subdivision, my husband and I, along with all of our neighbors, are just very concerned about the traffic and congestion that's to come through. The road that's leading from the subdivision is actually coming right around my house and my neighbor's house, and just with the amount of houses that are going in and how close they are together, just concerning that they'll actually start using a lot of our road and cause a lot of congestion, especially being thoughtful of the Highway 89 project. We are already having issues as it is with a lot of the traffic and congestion, and that's a lot of homes to put. I have a couple kids, and just thinking about, what that's going to look like when there's so many homes and so many people that are going to be driving in and out of the subdivision. I know in earlier meetings we were assured that, the development would not only be very nice, which I'm sure that it will be, and as much as I love the deer and the rabbits and the horses and cows that are next to us, we knew at some point it would be developed. And I just ask that, reconsider of putting together a plat that more matches of what Bromsfield and Tanglewood. I think from a safety perspective, that would make us feel a lot more comfortable.
All right, thank you very much. Ken Stetler.
Yes, my name is Ken Stetler, and pardon my voice, I have been a little under the weather. I'm located just south of the proposed property, have been there for 55 years. We've taken our family property and subdivided it already in some ways, and let me explain where we're at with it. I'm here on behalf of myself and my wife, and also my brother Jim, who lives right behind us, and his family, and my son Alan, who lives next to us as well. We just want to say that we have no objection to the annexation of the Frost property, and we have no objection to Frost properties seeking development. Our objection primarily is solely in regard to the proposed zoning. The use of a PRUD in determining density, and the proposed plot plan for the Frost property that clearly does present some high-density housing. Our objection, again, is in regard to the plan, is clearly not in harmony with surrounding neighborhoods. 2 homes that are currently on that property and 12 homes between the Frost property and Kaysville City border to the south are all located on much larger lots. And my own 8-home neighborhood that includes my home, my brothers, my sons, and 5 others, the smallest lot is a ½ acre. There's one that is 1 acre. All the remaining are 2 to 2.5 or more. We did this on purpose and at great expense in order to maintain the rural appearance and feel that we believe is appropriate to the natural setting of the foothills in which we reside. The current Tanglewood and Bromsfield subdivisions located to the north of the Frost property are neighborhoods consisting of larger than average lots and homes that again have been made possible by great personal expense and effort. All of these surrounding neighbors deserve to welcome a new subdivision that is compatible and enhances the existing areas for which these people have spent their lives creating. We are also concerned about some of the safety issues that would be proposed under the plot plan and the zoning. My home and my son's home will front the proposed extended frontage road that will be created with the Highway 89 expansion. It'll service this area and this new subdivision. With so many homes in such a small area, it'll obviously have an impact on the traffic for this road, yet we understand that there has been no traffic study or determination as to what safety measures, such as fences or lights or sidewalks and so forth, in our neighborhoods that will need to be taken in order to handle this new traffic and potential dangers. We strongly believe the proposed plan needs some serious study and modifications to be safe and compatible with existing neighborhoods. As such, we request that you vote no on this plan or table it until it can be appropriately modified. Thank you.
Very much. Oh, sorry. Okay. Something about city council meetings is that we don't have clapping or booing. You didn't know that, but just moving forward, we want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable sharing their opinion. So in future, please. Yes, but thank you for your support. All right. Let's go with Matt McRoberts.
Reviewing state codes, we read that an unincorporated area must be annexed to a municipality, may not be annexed to a municipality unless it's contiguous to the area. The proposed unincorporated area is not contiguous to the municipality. The area to the west of the proposed annexation is unincorporated. They're attempting to bridge this across the state-owned highway and using that for part of their boundary. The boundary to the south is unincorporated and is leaving an island. Also in the code, it talks about not leaving an island. In order to annex this property, it would be conducive that the developers annex the entire unincorporated portion or none of it. Also, it states that the municipality has not provided most or all of the municipal types of services to the area for over a year. Kaysville City has never provided any services to this area and does not appear to have the ability to do it at this time. This annexation, in order to try and get their boundaries to be the same or to match up and have some type of border, this has always been said that this is the Frost annexation, and then we find out yesterday with meeting with the county that we're actually annexing a larger portion of the stories and annexing individual homeowners' properties, which they have been completely in the dark for this entire time that they were being part of this process. This is going to cause these people financial damages in the tens of thousands of dollars that some may not be able to afford. To say that this property is not high density with a PRUD overlay is very misleading. When you look at it, there are enormous lots at the top that make it so it's not even the same type of subdivision at all. When you look at it, you would assume that it's two different subdivisions, one that is a high-density housing and one that's luxury lots. We would hope that you would consider this and take that into consideration. It does not match up to any of the properties that are surrounding it, and it does cause a lot of conflict, not only with the structure and the building of these homes, but with traffic. We've had several teenage children already lost from this neighborhood because of traffic on that road. And we're going to double the amount of houses and push them out the same exit. We need to be respectful of these parents who've lost children, and we need to be respectful of the parents who have children who drive this road. It will be a danger to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, no clapping. Thanks. Jake Parkinson, perhaps? Jake P.?
I'm the next one on the list. I'm Josh Peterson.
Okay, we'll do that.
I'm here speaking on behalf of Don and Doris Peterson. They own the property that on the plat is labeled Hidden Splendor LLC. They have an LLC that owns it. They're currently out of the country, and so I'm here representing them. There'd be a couple more slides over. So they are the far right next to, I guess it would be like the southeast corner there. They have two pieces of land, and they're next to the Cerces, who have also two parcels of land. They've recently acquired a little bit more from the Stories, who own the rest of it. You know, the homeowners were left in the dark in regards to the full annexation of all of the Stories' land being included in this. Aside from, I guess, a notice that was on the frontage road, my parents have been gone for a couple weeks, and how would they know something of this nature that's going to cause such financial burden in being incorporated into the city of Kaysville? They've been there for 27 years. I was raised in that house, and they don't have any desire to have their house annexed into Kaysville City. They've been on their own for 20 years, and they don't have any desire to be annexed into Kaysville City. Following on Mr. McRoberts, the Hidden Splendor properties would not be an island. They're next as far as needing to annex in the whole entire area. Their house would not be an island. The Cerces house would not be an island. They're up against Forest Service land and up against the public use land. I think that it's, let's see here. In addition, the Starnes, who own the southwest parcel, who I don't believe that they're here. Are they here? I don't believe they're here. No one could get a hold of them. I found out about this last night, which is why I'm not as prepared as Ken. He had like a perfect speech written out. I probably won't get an applause. I found about this last night, and I need to come to this to speak out against it. My parents are pro-development. They are on board with the Frost land being developed and eventually the Stories land being developed. I'm sure they have reservations about the density, especially on the lower portion of it. We've thrown around the idea of I may potentially buy a lot on the upper portion and move back to the neighborhood that I grew up in. I don't know if I'd want to do that if I was driving by 10th acre lots. I mean, that's absurd. It doesn't fit in with the rest of the property around this. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other people in the Bromsfield as well as in the Tanglewood as well as south of all this land that agree. I understand it from a developer standpoint. You have to make your numbers work. You have to sell the lots and make it so that the development makes financial sense. I think that can be achieved with larger lots that fit and more conform with the area.
Okay, thank you. Is Jake back? Or no. Come to the mic.
But I'm pro-development in terms of doing things the right way. But I have two little boys, 3 and 4, so I'm kind of against, or 4 and 5. So I'm not huge on an active development. Nothing against the guys, people that are 60 and older, but we have enough of those people around that area. And so I personally would rather have,
no laughing.
Yeah.
She'll get you.
I personally would rather have, maybe kids that my kids could play with in that area. So, and hopefully we could have, more families in that area. But that's my own personal opinion, and my own personal opinion as well is I actually feel like the people that own their own land, they can do what they want with it. So I don't really want to, overstep my bounds as far as that goes. And the only way you can control it is if you own the land around it. That's actually why I own 2 lots in the house that I do, because my house is on one, and then the other lot is the front yard. So it's about 3/4 of an acre. House is 6,600 square feet with a 2,000 square foot garage, obviously, and I'm, one house up from the freeway, so it would be comparable to where the high density would be as far as away from the highway, so it would be very different in terms of the size of the house and what's going on there. So anyway, but other than that.
Thanks. And Jake, what's your last name? Peterson. Thank you. All right. I think the next is Marv McAllister.
I've been a resident of Kaysville City for almost 30 years, and you may or may not know that there are Kaysville residents that live on the east side of Highway 89, and I'm one of those residents. I have some general observations similar to what Ken Stetler had, and that is that I think if you would ask the developer to redesign the lower portion of their project and get rid of the hammerhead streets, the dead-end streets, get rid of the 6,000 square foot lots and go to 1/3 to a 1/2 acre square lots and put some cul-de-sacs in, a lot of the objections that you're hearing tonight would go away. And I think that would make the entire project compatible with what's on the north side and what's on the south side, and we'd all be happy that live there now and the people that will move in there in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Marilyn McAllister.
I am a Kaysville resident living on the east side of Highway 89. I'm not opposed to development in our area because I know that it is imminent, but we had hoped that the developer would take into consideration the existing neighborhoods to the north and the south of their proposed development and maintain the nature of this area east of Highway 89. A high-density housing area sandwiched between more rural neighborhoods with most homes on half-acre lots will destroy the personality of the area. 76 homes on 6,000 to 8,000 square foot lots in the lower portion of the planned development just doesn't mesh with the existing neighborhoods. It is definitely high-density housing, and I'm disappointed that our elected officials in Kaysville, Mayor Witt and City Council members, have not done their due diligence to examine our protest to annexation and our concerns of the zoning for high-density housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fred Nichols.
When I found out that Layton had passed on the opportunity to annex this property based on water problems, I went to the Layton City engineer to find out what the issues were and was told that it wasn't really economically feasible for them to put in a water tank far enough up on the mountain, which would have to be on the east side of the Bonneville Trail to provide sufficient pressure. They weren't interested in getting involved in something of that nature, and that even though it was done for in that manner for Tanglewood and Twin Peaks, it wasn't economically possible to do it now for the new development, and that they weren't interested in getting involved in that. Also, there were issues associated with the Highway 89 expansion and either the removal or replacement of 2 water tanks that are already adjacent to the highway there. And that apparently is still up in limbo. Nobody's decided about that yet. Yet the developers have already invested heavily in a solution, placing a water tank on their property. and donating that property to the city of Kaysville. Probably preliminary to understanding what's really going to happen with those tanks on Highway 89. I was just concerned that the residents would receive proper services from whatever water solution is arrived at. And Layton saw no solution available, and I'm wondering how this solution is going to serve their needs.
Thank you. Kristen Sims.
It's really Jimmy rigged, but I'm learning a lot with coming to this meeting tonight. Little chicken scratches here. Just so we all can kind of be on the same page.
Thanks.
It's almost as scary as talking in church. Okay, so I'm just coming to this meeting pretty much to talk as a perspective of a mom. I lived in Bromsfield for 3 or 4 years, and now I live in the neighborhood right straight across from Crestwood. I have 4 kids. I cross the highway anytime between 2 and 3 times a day to 10 or 12 times a day. Scouts, activity days, soccer. I mean, you guys know the drill. You know what it's like. Every morning at 8:45, this morning, 8:45, I take my kids to school. I come out. Well, there's no way I'm going to get across Crestwood. No way. So I make the right-hand turn, kind of cut 2 people off to get over into this way. And then right at Corral Drive, which goes over to Mutton Hollow, there's already 2 cars in the middle of the road, parked to get through there. And the southbound is totally dead stopped. And then there's 2 more cars that came out of Tanglewood that are flipping around, moms, taking kids to school to come back and try and get down to school. And that's the way it is almost every day. And so we all wait, and that's dangerous to be out there, but that's what we do every day. 6 o'clock at night, same thing. And I know it's really hard to understand what that's like if you don't live there and go through that every day, and that is why I'm here, I'm not going to gain or lose anything from this, but my concern, the number one concern that I have is if you add that many homes, you're talking at least 150 to 200 more vehicles trying to do that exact same thing, that very same thing that I was trying to do. So the only thing I ask is before you sign your name and pass this, I would ask that each of you go up at 8:45 in the morning and try and get across that road and then try and get back. And then at 6 o'clock at night, do it again and then try and get across. Go from Mutton Hollow up to Corral. Take a left at Crestwood and try and get up to Tanglewood. I dare you. And then try and get back and see how you feel. See if you feel safe. See if you feel like you'd want your teenagers, who we have lost, many teenagers. I've been in an accident on that road. My neighbor lost her daughter on that road. See if you feel comfortable with your teenagers doing that. See if you feel comfortable with your wives and a whole car full of kids doing that. And then see if you feel comfortable adding another 150 or 200 vehicles to that mix. That's all I ask. Before you sign it, go up and see exactly what we're talking about. It's just not safe. We're adding fuel to an already bad situation. I'm not against the housing. I'm just against that there's no infrastructure right now to handle that many more vehicles. It's already not safe. And so that's all I ask. Go look. Go try it. I'll wave to you.
All right. Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.
Chris Trujillo.
Thank you, Mayor Witt, City Council. It's our pleasure.
Sorry, would you please state your name?
Sorry, my name's Chris Trujillo, and I just want to thank you for, again, considering our petition. We have went to great lengths to make sure that our petition is in accordance with the laws, statutes. We've talked to the county, we've talked to the city, we've had staff look at our petition, the annexation. We understand that it is difficult whenever a property is developed, when you have a vacant lot or a lot with just two big piece of property with only 2 homes on it, and changes is a difficult thing. But we do feel like that this is a quality project, something that the city needs. in terms of some diversity in housing, some additional options, and just again, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. All right. Marlon Barrett.
And we've lived there 40 years. We're adjacent to the Stetler property in the non-incorporated area. And I think Ken Stetler has reflected probably our view as well. We're concerned for the density and the traffic. We don't want to see the frontage road turned into what 89 is today, the date it's put in there. We're hoping that the new freeway and the frontage roads will alleviate a situation that's really become unbearable. But to put that many people, that many cars right on the frontage road the day it's almost open is of concern. And beyond that, my concern would be the same as Ken's. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lance Munson.
We'll pass these around. This is kind of giving you a view of traffic on a typical day up there in our lovely neck of the woods. Let me hold this up. Should have brought my reading glasses. Oops. All right, well, thank you so much for taking the time tonight. Thank you to all you city council members that I've been in touch with over the past week, especially Michelle Barber for holding that meeting with us on Monday night to let the public be heard. It was refreshing, to tell you the truth. Hopefully all of you have had a chance to read through our protest. I've talked with a few council members, that at least one that told me he was a yes vote and he hadn't even read my protest. So that obviously concerns me greatly. I hope that you would we put a lot of time and effort into that, and to just discard it is very offensive, to tell you the truth. We have never been against annexation of this area. The builder will tell you different. They've told us, oh, these guys are such a strong opposition to annexation, and hey, annex away. Develop it right, zone it right. That's what we're asking. I think it's a simple ask. The developer has also mentioned that they've had several meetings with us, the neighbors. They've had one meeting with us. In my book, that's not several. So, and I'm sure it has been difficult. I'm sure it's been a long time for the developer. This is part of what a developer does, right? They go through this process, and it sometimes takes years. And that's what developers do. I'm in real estate as well. Sometimes you do stuff, and you end up not getting paid at the end of the day. It sucks. But at the end of the day, they've got to realize that this is part of the business. If this is not a high-density development, I stand before you a 150-pound man. This is absolutely a high-density development. Come on, look at it. What they're asking for tonight, did you see how they slipped in? And we would like you to make another variance amongst tons of variances that are already being done for this development, to throw in a little PRUD. Hopefully you guys know what a PRUD does to a development, what you can do with a PRUD. You can pack in 80 homes in the bottom third and sprinkle in a couple on top. You have a water tank that doesn't take up any houses. You have the fault line that you can't build on. That's why they have the green space. It's a fault line. So anyway, I've been in real estate for over 25 years, and this is a bad development. My high-end clients do not want a view that overlooks high-density development. What happens if the lots do not sell? This is a major problem for Kaysville City taxpayers, and as well as us neighbors. You've heard the traffic concerns, there's safety concerns. What if there's a fire? How do you get across there? There's a lot of issues that you guys have got to take into consideration.
Okay.
Let me finish. Just let me finish. We get 3 minutes to be heard
Yes.
on a subject that is going to affect our neighborhood. That is pathetic. The developer has been given a year and a half to talk to you. I think allowing us a couple extra minutes will be okay.
I have a very strict policy, and I have talked to you at length, and so your 3 minutes are up. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Just one last statement. The emperor has no clothes. This is a poor development.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, thank you for everybody who shared their comments. I think first we will consider a consideration of amended annexation agreement regarding property at approximately 1402 North Highway 89. All right. Any questions on this? Councilmember Garn.
Yeah, I think, I understand 3 separate motions, but because they're sort of tied together and the agreement mentions the PRUD, I think it's appropriate maybe to ask these questions now. Okay. The first thing I noticed, and I just want to clarify that when you have a PRUD overlay, some of the R18 code sections regarding setbacks, the narrative in the packet mentions 20-foot setback instead of 25, 5 side yard instead of 8, greater than 600-foot cul-de-sac, actually hammerheads rather than cul-de-sacs, and so and one-sided sidewalks. So are those under is it the PRUD mechanism that allows some discretion in some of those code sections?
Councilmember Garn, I'd be happy to answer that for you. So a typical development is regulated by the underlying zoning district. For example, an R18 zone has 25-foot front yard setbacks, 8-foot typical side yards, the number of lots that are allowed based on what fits within those lot sizes of 8,000 square feet. When you apply the PRUD overlay, what that does is it gives the council ultimately some discretion on allowing some flexibility in the development. So it doesn't allow additional lots, but it allows for different layouts and different configurations within those. So as pointed out within the staff reports, if you feel that you're getting the development that's needed for the development for, I believe the language of the ordinance is essentially better development that helps conserve open spaces or works with difficult terrain, then it gives you that ability to be flexible and deviate from the underlying standards. And we use it frequently within subdivisions around town. We have a lot of common open space type subdivisions in Kaysville, so you'll see it on different occasions, but those are the instances where you'll see the 8-foot side yard drop to 5 feet. In this case, I believe it's 8 foot one side, 5 foot on the other. Items like the sidewalk, private streets, the hammerhead versus cul-de-sac are at your discretion if you think it's appropriate for the specific development.
Thank you. And 2 more questions real quick. So I remember from maybe more than a year ago when we first started considering this annexation agreement that the number of lots hasn't really changed since then. So I was curious about the PRUD. What are maybe this is a question for the developer, but because the amount of lots have not increased, what would be the reason to ask for a PRUD?
I could maybe show our perspective and maybe let the developer speak to why they asked for it.
So add a little more definition to that question. Is it because of and my last question pertains to, I actually drove up there today about 5 p.m. around rush hour, which leads to my last question, but I also walked around a little bit and really looked at the land, and it's not like most other land in Kaysville because it's on a hill, it's not flat. And so part of the PRUD to take into consideration the geography so that you have more flexibility in how the, even roads might be an issue as you're climbing the hill and how they're laid out, et cetera.
Yeah, I think very much so, and ultimately the product that they ended up selecting early on in the process, as the developer met with us as staff, they had, we'll call them bubble type maps, just very generic what type of homes might be in different sections of the property, so no street layouts, no lot specific. And as it's evolved, as they've worked through different meetings, neighborhood group meetings and such that I've seen, and based on that input, they selected a product. And as they began to go with their engineers, the topography played significantly into that. You build a flat road on a 10% slope, and how they're cutting into the soils impacted some of their decisions. The senior living component and the desired lot sizes played into that. Some of the terrains or easements across the property played into it as well. So again, we don't design the subdivisions from the staff level, so as it evolved and as they produced that, we recognize that in order to accommodate that, the PRUD would be a necessary ask in the type of development that they were proposing.
Thank you. And last question, as I was driving in and out, the time I was there, it was probably 4:45, so you're starting to get into rush hour. So there was a lot of traffic, and I thought, gee, how does anybody ever get out of here? I've been waiting for quite a while. And then it's like, okay, I think I see my opening. If I go to Mutton Hollow, I can race across all three lanes, and then I can turn left and either go down Mutton Hollow or I end up flipping a UE because there's no. And anyway, the point is, what is the timing? Because clearly 89 is going to be, that's going to be improved. I would be concerned if the development is going forward and you have a number of new homes coming in and people are trying to, the backup trying to get on 89 and only really safely being able to turn right, and that's even questionable, then what is the timing of the improvements that, would improve traffic, or is there going to be development before the improvements?
I know that there's been some discussion about the timing of 89 just because they've had a lawsuit filed against them. So they have been a little cagey with their start and end dates. They have chosen a contractor on that project, and they are starting to engage the cities. We have a monthly meeting with UDOT and their contractor in an effort to discuss city facilities and different things that will impact our city. I think they're still, as far as they're concerned, I still think they have a 2021 construction start date. So whether that's going to continue or not is probably still debatable.
That's okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Anybody on this side? Okay. Councilmember. Okay. Anyone else? Councilmember Barber.
Just more questions on the accommodations with the PRUD. I think the developer wanted to answer, and that would be fine, but let me first preface with my question. Specifically, the side yards and the front yards, the differences in them, and what that means to the development overall. Where's that space going that we're accommodating for?
Sure, those are really, really good questions. I think just to, in general, our type of product, our folks don't want a lot of big yards to take care of. That's why they're moving into it. And so what we try to do is, in this particular situation, we have some 6,000 to 8,000 square foot lots, which is around 30 lots. We have another almost 46 lots that range from 8,000 to 13,000. And as we've gone up this road, you're dealing with slope issues. As you go through the slope issues, what we've done is we've had the lots on the west side will have basements, so they have views. The lots on the east side will be one level. And so it'll accommodate, it was the best way to make it work, to be able to have different product type, to deal with where the open space is, and you have some easements there, the 10% slope. The 5 and 8 side yards on the first section, those are in play as you get up towards the bigger sections. In some areas I think it's a little wider, but the 5 and 8, 13 feet between each house is really nice. And what we do that's different is that the fences don't come up to the front of the house; they're on the back of the house. So that 13 feet feels like open space. It is owned by an individual, but the fence is put on the rear of the home. and which makes it feel a lot more open. I hope that answers.
Just one more question while you're up here. When I was listening to the Planning Commission meeting you guys were at, you were saying the request for less density, and you were saying this is what people want, and I understand that. But
sure.
Is there other ways, as I toured your other Ovation home projects, it seemed like there was a lot of variance in the design, in the layout. Do you foresee any other options here besides the one area of open space that you have right now?
As far as, I guess I'm trying to understand your question.
As to when the request came before Planning Commission, one of your comments I thought was interesting was that there was really no option because people want these smaller lots with the smaller houses. But as I toured your other areas, your other properties, I thought there's different ways that you're incorporating green space throughout. So there's less density, but still the smaller lots, smaller homes that people are in that market are looking for.
Yeah, what we try and do is as we design, we've done this for almost 18 years, just active adults, and one thing we found is when the developer leaves, is this going to be sustainable? That's one of the reasons why we try to do is public roads as much as we can. The open space that we provide, we want to be maintainable. And we want to try and keep the integrity of what we're going into. So in this particular situation, on the north side, you've got a lot of trees. There's a drop-off. But it's an awesome point to where you can create some sort of a trail for our clients that can go there with a bench and sit and watch the overlook, the sunset and so forth. And so for us, that was a big deal for us to be able to preserve that portion because it would be a higher point that everyone could enjoy. Now, is there an easement there? Yes. And is that, it works both ways. It helps us, and also I think it'll be nice for the people living there.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Councilmember Page.
Yeah, since we're having questions, this is for the city. You know, I notice we have these hammerhead turnouts, and there it is. Have we had feedback from our fire department on this? Because I know that's the ones that's going to affect them the most.
Yeah, we've reviewed this internally as staff, and our fire chief has examined those items as well as the long cul-de-sacs to make sure they feel comfortable and are able to service the area. And the feedback that we've received is they're okay as designed.
Okay.
All right. Councilmember Adams, any questions?
No.
No? Okay.
A few. What are the surrounding zones currently? North, south, west?
Pull up a map to help show that as well for us. So surrounding it, they're in other jurisdictions, so I'm not entirely certain what they are as far as directly to the north and the neighborhood to the south. Adjacent to it, as far as Kaysville City jurisdiction, is the Wilderness Park, and it's in the blue public use zone. Directly to the west is more R18 single-family zoning, and so all that gray that you see. The closest neighborhoods within Kaysville are the R18 on the west side, and then there's the R110 subdivision. I think we had some residents speak this evening that live in that neighborhood. It's tucked between the green and blue in that corner, and that's a 10,000 square foot type lot size.
So if we were to speculate on the latent zone, Tanglewood, half acre-ish. Okay, so let's break that down. Let's say it's a third then. So, okay.
Yeah. All right.
We got people nodding. What was that?
Could the developer answer that? Is that the question you want?
Yeah, we actually, Peter Mattson, who works with Ovation, was at the city for 25 years at Layton, and it's owned R110.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I've heard it thrown around a lot tonight that there's some Story property involved. Where's the we got representation here from the other land. Where's the representation there? Who's the steward of that land?
It's not mandatory that it's not mandatory for people to show up. So.
Well, it's a pretty big deal. And from what I've heard, it's our CFO who has power of attorney over his family's land. I think he ought to be representing what is going on here. Sounds like he's already sold some of his land off, we heard tonight. So what are the intentions there? Why aren't those conflicts of interest being disclosed? I've voiced this before. We keep getting ourselves into muddy water. I think that should have been disclosed 18 months ago. It's kind of a big deal. Why do we keep going down these roads?
Point of order, is this a question?
Why do we keep going down those roads? I'll pause and allow you to answer then. That is a question format. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Were you...
Mayor, do you
yes.
want me to address that?
Yes, please.
Mr. Story does work at Kaysville City. As we've gone through this process, I think Mr. Story has engaged with the annexation applicants. You would have to ask them that. Mr. Story has never said one word to me about this annexation. I believe he's, because he does own property, or his family owns property in this area, I think he's purposely kept himself out of the situation so as to avoid the conflict that I assume I don't know if you're questioning or alleging or what it is, but he has chosen not to be here tonight, so he doesn't want any sense of impropriety in this development at all. As far as his relationship with the annexation applicants, I don't know what that is. He's never attended any of the meetings that I've been in with the applicants, and then of course he's not here to defend himself.
And I would.
He did appear at the county commission. I have the floor. He did appear at the county commission hearing, and he has contacted residents. And
point of order again. Is this a question?
How about this?
Are you the mayor?
I think I decide who has the floor, too. So let's, if you could phrase it as a question, that would be great.
Did he appear at the county commission meeting?
I wouldn't know because I wasn't there. And that's not really my purview, in fact. So I don't know that it's our job to know who showed up to that.
It's our job to avoid conflicts of interest, is it not?
And you know what? I have been here 10, 11 months. And the first I heard of the Story property being involved with this is when I got the protest from Mr. Munson. Mr. Story has never contacted me and asked me to take special care on this or try to influence me in any way. As far as I'm concerned, Dean Story, his conduct has been above reproach. He has not tried to press an advantage on this at all.
Did anyone say that he had?
That is what you are insinuating.
That's
and
your opinion of my words.
I feel that he is inappropriately being maligned in his absence. And he is a resident of Kaysville. He has property that is adjacent, but he has been above reproach. He has never tried to press an advantage on this. And you can believe me or not, but he owes me nothing.
All I asked is there a representative here of that piece of land? This is kind of a big deal.
I understand that, but you're insinuating that he has been not honest.
I think you took it to that level.
Well,
Shall we take a poll?
No, let's not. But I apologize for misconstruing your comments. But let's move on from that because I really feel that he has been very circumspect and keeping out of this. And if any council members have anything to relate as far as Mr. Story is concerned, please share. But I feel very strongly that he has kept out of this completely. Councilmember Barber?
I was just going to say in all of the meetings I've had about this, He's never been present, never been brought up at all. I had no interaction with him either about this.
Councilmember DeCare?
Spending a lot
Actually,
of time.
when I served on the planning commission with this issue, I mean, for the past year or so, you guys came before the planning commission on multiple occasions, and Dean Story was never present. So, I mean, he, like I said, it was news to me, you know, that this was even remotely an issue of any impact.
And Councilmember Garn, have you had any pressure put on you?
No, not at all. And in fact, it had been some time, somebody had mentioned it to me, but I had no idea that Dean Story was even involved at all until some third party mentioned that.
Right. Okay. I think that as far as this council is concerned, this is not an issue, and we're going to move on. All right.
So,
Councilmember Adams, yes.
All right. I still haven't seen a report of costs that might come to the taxpayers. Do we have a report on any potential cost, any kind of utility extensions or anything like that?
All development costs should be borne by the applicant, just as they would in any other development.
And in the event thereof that UDOT doesn't hit 2021, as you speculated, emphasis on speculate, and in the event thereof that UDOT does not tear out the water tanks that is speculated to be torn out, and we do not receive funding from UDOT to build the tank to fuel this development, who pays for it then?
I think if we don't have a check from UDOT before construction, we won't construct a new water tank.
Which means we won't have a development.
That may be the case. They've committed to giving us a check, though, in the near future.
Okay.
Did the letter go out to all of these residents? As I've sat here and listened this week, it's come to my knowledge, which wasn't a knowledge before, that there are residents who are completely unaware not only of the development but even of the annexation. Specifically residents whose homes reside in annexed areas to be annexed, and they knew nothing of this. Did we follow the rule of mailing them a letter? No. I'll gladly accept answers. I mean, sorry, folks, on both sides of this issue, this is kind of the politics of the issue. So it is what it is. We have a rule in place, and this is a big deal. If my home was to be annexed, and I wasn't notified until 18 months later due to a good Samaritan neighbor, heaven forbid how any of us would feel. So did we follow the rule? Did we mail letters?
And I'll respond to that, Councilman Adams. We believe as staff that we've met all the noticing requirements required by state. Much of it was done much earlier on in the process to meet their requirements, newspaper noticing, mailings, posted property, and the like. So a recent notice, I don't believe for the specific meeting, was mailed because those prior obligations had been met at previous hearings and meetings.
Yeah, but we took state a little further and we implemented a rule that we will be mailing letters out within a certain radius, especially of this magnitude.
Correct. We do have an ordinance in place for a rezone where we would mail out within 500 feet. But as an annexation process, we did not mail out within 500 feet for that.
Is rezone not on the agenda tonight?
The assignment of a zone is part of the annexation process.
Sounds like a rezone, though. I'm not picking on you, Lyle. I think you know that. That sounds like a rezone.
They sound alike, but per ordinance, they're different in statute and different processes. So if we feel that the council needs to do additional noticing before making a decision, and that could be an issue that we can do as staff.
I just don't like the fact that that could be construed as a workaround, to our citizenry that, well, it wasn't our land before. We didn't have a zone for it. We're giving it a zone. We're giving birth to a zone. In my opinion, I think that would constitute the letter.
No clapping, please.
When were these neighborhood group meetings? I heard you reference them again when you spoke, and I heard them referenced tonight. When were these neighborhood group meetings?
I think that's a question for the developer or the Trujillos.
us can.
Is it in this letter that you emailed? Can I read them?
Yeah, please, Councilmember DeCare.
We have made efforts to meet with the neighbors. Mr. Munson's, blah, blah, blah. We have personally met with each family in Mr. Munson's neighborhood and their homes, multiple occasions, including with staff and staff president and mayor were present at one of the meetings. For example, neighbor meetings were held at City Hall July 11th, 2017 and August 30th, 2017. We also have documented meetings with neighbors at homes, in yards, as to drop by on March 15th, 2017, June 13th, 2017, June 14th, 2017, June 19th, 2017, June 20th, 2017, June 26th, June 28th, July 5th, July 9th, September 7th, and September 18th, all 2017. We have also made many other calls and visits, of which do not list here. So that's well over a dozen and a half.
So were any of the residents tonight present at those meetings? By show of hands?
One meeting.
I was present at one meeting.
One meeting here.
Just getting a feel for things.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So, okay. Okay.
We're good.
All right. Thank you. All right. Councilmember Adams, anything else?
As the anger begins to build, which it will over issues like this, I want to remind everyone, especially on the development side, we represent all the people of this city. We're not your personal assistants. We're not your agents. We represent everyone in the room. Keep that in mind.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Barber.
This is for Lyle. Do we have a representative from the county here tonight?
Yes, I believe there is staff here from Davis County.
Okay. Are they able to speak to their response to the petition?
Jeff Euler with Davis County Community Development.
Thank you for coming, by the way. I appreciate that.
What's the question?
My question is, the county, you've received the petition to the annexation and your thoughts and the county's response, if you're able to speak to that.
To the original annexation petition?
The recent one filed by...
The protest?
Yes, the protest. I'm sorry. Yes, protest.
We did receive a protest recently at the county. We discussed that protest as staff. We discussed it with your staff. Mm-hmm. When we have a protest, when we have a protest to any annexation, we have one option, and that is we form a boundary commission and we present the findings of that protest to the boundary commission. We present the protest to the boundary commission, and they make a determination on that protest. The boundary commission is made up of 2 elected county officials, 2 elected officials from the Davis County in general, and then those 4 individuals pick 3 people at large. That boundary commission is not in existence at this time. They serve 4-year terms. They haven't met for over 10 years. So we met with the representatives that filed the petition and told them that we have 30 days from the protest to form the boundary commission, and we asked them to seek legal advice on whether or not they believed that they had standing to file that petition, and that they should let us know before we move forward with the boundary commission. That's what we've done.
Okay. So that would be 30 days from when it was filed?
30 days from the date it was filed.
And we're talking, and the protest was officially filed just this week, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think my next question will be for Lyle. I just think it'd be helpful, the ratios are met for the petition, the annexation petition that we're having the agreement on today.
Yeah, so back in October, I think of 2018, if I remember the dates correctly, the city originally certified the annexation petition where we looked at the signatures that were included within that, if there was enough acreage as far as the overall area of land included and the value.
Was it 2018 or are you talking about the one in 2017?
Thank you. October of 2017. Yeah, so it was certified back about a year ago, and that's when the attorney's office and our office verifies the signatures, matches to make sure that it meets statutory requirements for value of property and the amount of property within the area. There are different majorities that are required to be met. It was certified at that time. From there, when additional notices were sent out, we did actually receive back in 2017 a protest from the county itself with concerns at that time. Per statute, it was alluded to tonight, there's a requirement that an annexation be contiguous to an existing municipal boundary and that it not create islands or peninsulas unless the city and county agree upon it. And so the county at the time, of course, they're more in the business of not running municipal government. They like cities to take over their unincorporated areas, encouraged us to consider the neighborhood to the south of this. It was determined through that process that they would be okay if we didn't at this time based on the citizen input of that area, and agreed to drop the protest, and we're okay with the proposed boundary that you see before you. So that goes to a second question with that protest and maybe to our stance as staff. Recently, with the paperwork that was received, is reviewing that with our legal office and city attorney, where the certification was done back in October of 2017. There's a 30-day time frame to file an official protest. The county met that at the time. That one was considered after that time as well past that. So we feel comfortable as a city that we have standing to move forward and make a decision should you feel comfortable to do so. If there's additional questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them as well.
So as it stands, the majority has been met for this annexation?
Correct. It meets the requirements.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Garn?
I'm sorry, Mayor. I just one part of the question on traffic that I had forgot to ask, if it's okay.
Of course.
Thank you. So one thing that I thought would be nice as I was thinking about that area, I'm wondering, I can't really recall ever discussing or maybe I just can't remember and I have Halfheimers, but sort of what the road structure will be like once 89 is redone. How easy will it be for residents in the new area to access Kaysville? You know, I think it would be nice if they could easily access Kaysville services and Kaysville events and everything. Obviously, you can always go in and turn, but is there any thought to that in the design, in UDOT's design of 89?
I'll attempt to answer that for you, Councilmember Garn, and I apologize for some of the generalities. I'm not prepared on very specific details, but as UDOT's been preparing for the Highway 89 project, what it essentially does is turns the highway into a freeway-like status where there are no at-grade intersections, so no more signals. Everything will be either an interchange like you see on I-15 or an overpass or underpass along the freeway. The close projects are at Crestwood Road, I believe would be the closest. It is not an interchange. It would be proposed that I believe the highway goes over Crestwood Road, if I recall correctly. And so that would probably be the most direct route into Kaysville City at Crestwood. Further south at 200 North, which is one I'm more familiar with, or 400 in Fruit Heights, because of its interaction with us, is a full interchange freeway style on and off ramp. There are additional projects to the north, but I'd be guessing what those are at this time.
Oak Lane, I think, would be the closest.
Okay. Thank you, Lyle. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, and so if everybody, these folks are definitely aware that there'll be frontage roads, and so eventually it will be better. But in the interim, there are real concerns. Any more questions on this? Okay. All right. Okay. Are we ready to address A.
With regard to a motion?
Yes.
These have to be three separate
Correct.
motions, right?
That is correct.
With regard to letter A, I'll make a motion that we approve consideration of amended annexation agreement regarding property at approximately 1402 North Highway 89.
I will second.
Okay, it's been motioned by Councilmember DeCare and seconded by Councilmember Garn. Councilmember Page.
Aye.
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 No chance for further comment?
Thank you.
It's a quick one.
Yes, please.
A little
I'm
out of
so
order
sorry.
there.
No, you're right.
Have we received monies from the developer?
I don't think we have. We have agreements to collect monies, but I don't think we have collected any money. Have we?
Oh.
Sorry, remind me.
I believe there have been some. They would know the numbers, but for the design process.
Okay.
Oh, for the design of the water tank. Yes, we have.
Oh,
That was how
this
much?
is true.
$42,000.
So we've received money before approvals.
Right.
A little bit of the cart before those horse thingies that usually go in front of the cart.
No, what we weren't willing to do is design a water tank that would only accommodate this subdivision without them taking all the risk. So if we don't annex or if they withdraw their application, they walk away from that money and we're not out anything. Then we can move on with putting the water tank in another location if we choose to do so.
Due to the fact that there wasn't proper notification, I'm not completely against the annexation, but due to that and the foul play or the omissions in our processes, I'd like to see us tighten those up and get better as we go forward. I'm a nay.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Councilmember DeCare, please
So,
hold your decorum.
motion
I
passes.
have Councilmember Adams.
Okay. Motion passes 4-1. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to B, annexing 65.93 acres of property located at approximately 1402 North Highway 89, ordinance 18-11-1. Are we doing questions for this specifically?
Is there separate public comment for this one?
No,
Or it was all
no,
just
we
the
did
one?
it all together
Okay.
so that we could get it all up at front. Any questions about the annexation? Councilmember Garn?
I think my only
And
question
Councilmember
is,
Adams.
I would like to make a comment, if that would be okay, after a motion.
Yes. So we're doing questions now specifically to this. All right. The annexation itself. Councilmember Adams, you were
A
next.
question on topic with what with what you're getting at. Why is there so much on one agenda? This is a landslide of activity for one night. Why?
Shane?
Sure. Well, first of all, we've been talking about this for a year and a half.
I've seen developments take 12 years. For
Okay,
entitlements.
we don't have a specific time frame
I'm
of
not
what
worried
it.
about how long somebody's put their time into making a lot of money. I'm not worried about that. It's not my concern.
Second of all, we have dropped an annexation agreement already, and the timing of the annexation the annexation agreement needs to be adopted first. So we already did that. I think it was several months ago, but we did need to make a change. So that's why that item is on this agenda. The second item is the annexation itself. So that's what we've been building to for a very long time. And then a preliminary plat is just the timing is worked out with them as far as when they wanted to present that to the Planning Commission. So.
And if I recall, I haven't been here as long as Councilmember Adams. However, it seems that this is the order it goes in. We have preliminary plats attached with other things. But you're right, it is a lot. But I feel that we've had it come before council 4 times since I've been mayor. So it's not. I don't feel like we're rushing it. We've been working at this for quite some time. Go ahead. Sorry.
If I may, to help bring understanding to the room, I mean, this room has only been filled to this capacity twice in your tenure, Mayor, twice. Okay, so it's a little bit surprising to have this happen at the end when, I mean, it just says to me that there was some communications that were omitted, not maybe on purpose, but this is a huge surprise to see this. And I'm grateful that they're here, but I think we ought to take note, all of us, that this is 1 of 2 times in 2018 that this room has been filled. So there's obviously something we need to be hearing here.
Thank you. Questions on annexation? Councilmember Barber, anything on annexation? Okay. Questions, Councilmember Page?
Well, I was just going to mention, for the record.
Is it a question?
There's, okay, no.
All right, hold on.
I'll hold that thought.
Right, okay. So at this time, I would entertain a motion.
I move to annex 65.93 acres of property located at approximately 1402 North, Highway 89.
Second.
All right, it's been motioned by Councilmember Garn, seconded by Councilmember DeCare. And now we will go to comments. Councilmember Page.
Aye.
Comments, sorry.
Oh, comments.
Sorry.
Okay.
That you wanted to give.
I was just going to mention that I was at the Planning Commission meeting when we discussed this, and there wasn't this many, but for a Planning Commission meeting, there was a lot of people there. So, I mean, there was definitely people aware of it. There was a lot of comments.
All right. Thank you. Other comments on this? Councilmember Garn.
Well, I understand I served with Councilmember DeCare on the Planning Commission for, I think you were there probably two or 3 years.
Yeah, until you moved on, yeah.
I was there 4, and so far 3 years on the City Council. And virtually every land use decision, including one before I was on the Council and the Planning Commission, where I came in, much like many of you, and said, I'm not sure I really want a Smith's Marketplace in my backyard, which is where it is now. And it turned out by the time I was on the Planning Commission and the City Council, I looked at it a little differently because I could see the great need for those kinds of services in West Kaysville. And it hasn't been nearly as bad as I thought, but I was grateful that I was able to work on mitigating some of the impacts, and there were several concessions that the developer made to mitigate the impacts on the close, and I am immediately behind it. I mean, there's nothing between me and the Smiths, the back wall. And I think the only reason I say that is that it's natural, it's normal to be concerned when there's something new that's going to be right in your backyard. But I would just point, but sometimes I look at it and I think, okay, what are the actual impacts? Because obviously this is higher density than some of the surrounding homes that are around it. But if you look at the total impact, the total number of homes, it, by any definition is actually not high density because you have 65 acres with 90 units. I think of high density, I've been in Kaysville for 33 years, but I grew up in Salt Lake, and I remember a lot of those zoning issues. My dad was mayor of Salt Lake, and they would put apartment complexes in, and there's still apartment complexes going in. Now that's high density, where you have, lots of, and I'll summarize my comments, I don't want to go too long. But I do see a need. We do have some issues in Kaysville. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. Actually, that's a beautiful area up there where you all live. I was just, wow, this is beautiful up here. And all of Kaysville is, I think. And so we're very fortunate to have what we have. But we do have some planning problems sometimes when we have everything the same and every lot the same. We tend to have, no young people, no elderly people, only 5,500. I'm 60. I'll be 61 in January. Over 55 age people, 5,500, and we have 150 of those types of housing units. So this is a real need. And the other thing that's interesting, I don't want to say I don't know where the study came from. I'm not going to make an assessment how accurate, but still we've got some here, 3.7 trips versus 11 trips for a typical home for senior living. So if you look at that in terms of density and traffic, that means, one third the traffic of a normal, maybe a younger demographic there. So now you've got, as if when you're looking at traffic, a much lower density as far as the traffic that's created. That's just a fact.
No shouting out. Hey, please. No shouting out.
So all those things in consideration, I know, it's not, there's nothing's perfect, and safety is a concern. I think my biggest concern is the timing of when improvements occur, because I do think it's an issue with traffic if too much development goes in too fast before the road structure is able to handle it. But I think that, I think that's going to be somewhat of a limiting factor to the market, and how fast the development. So hopefully those things are roughly coinciding. But I think on the whole, these are difficult decisions, but do try to make decisions for the good of the community and overall. And I think that sort of the burden of proof of the developer has been met, that this meets the requirements, and so I'm in favor of it.
Okay. Councilmember Barber, did you have something?
I do. I have comments that I've saved for this annexation portion. But I wondered, can the developer speak to the timing to answer the question of how soon you would plan to actually get these lots developed?
You bet. Our plans are, as far as improvements, to get in as soon as we can. But it takes 3, 4, 5 months to do improvements. By the time you get houses done, you're 8 months, 8, 9 months. So we're easily over a year from now before we'd have residents in there. And we're doing it in phases. So there's 3 phases. The first phase is approximately 25 units. So if you break that down in 3 phases, you got to do improvements above and beyond that. It's going to take additional time. So we're looking at it being anywhere from a 3 to 5 year project.
Thank you. Just a comment on the annexation itself. I do really appreciate the time that was put in by residents to come through. We did look it over, and we appreciate that. I drove up there 6 o'clock multiple times, and the traffic is definitely a consideration. It's really difficult. And I'm thankful the county is here as well, because I think that is where a lot of the answers will come as far as that protest comes along. But the annexation itself, I looked back clear to a year ago. That's why I was able to correct you. It was actually October a year ago, before our time, when a lot of this was happening, the annexation itself. So I think being able to speak to that helped me get that background. So thank you.
Councilmember DeCare, do you have any comments?
No.
All right. Okay. Councilmember Adams, any comments?
Not at this time.
Okay. Comments? All right. We're going to move on to a vote. So, Councilmember Garn.
Aye.
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 Show me the check from UDOT, and I would be an aye. Nay. Too much speculation. Aye.
All right. Motion passes 4-1. Okay. Let's go to preliminary plat approval for Orchard Ridge Estates subdivision at 1402 North Highway 89. And, okay, so let's go to questions on the preliminary plat. Councilmember DeCare.
This is probably for the developer. I think I already know the answer. I think it's probably right here before me. But there were some slight modifications from what was originally proposed to what we have here before us. You guys subtracted out a handful of lots. Is that my understanding? I mean, it's essentially the same thing, right?
Do you mean from the annexation, with the 95 lots?
Yeah. Right, less units. That's what I meant. Right, less.
Fewer units,
right,
but
yeah,
not since
units.
Planning
right.
Commission.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, okay. Just one point of clarification, okay. I'm good
Very
then.
good.
Yeah.
All right. Questions about the preliminary plat? Okay. I don't see any questions. I will entertain a motion at this time.
I'll move that we grant preliminary plat approval for Orchard Ridge State subdivision at 1402 North Highway 89 for Compass Holdings development.
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember DeCare, seconded by Councilmember Page. Comments at this time? Councilmember Adams, any comments? None?
I don't think they would do any good.
Okay. Councilmember Page, anything? Any comments?
No, they've been answered.
Okay. Any comments on this side?
No.
All right.
I do have.
Councilmember Barber, go ahead.
When I look at this zone and some of the questions that will come from the impact, I would like to better understand the timing and the impact that it'll have, especially the traffic, when that will go down. So, I mean, I think the developer's spoken to that, but that's my hesitation.
Okay. All right. We will start our vote. Councilman.
I'll make a substitute motion.
Okay.
I motion that we table item C and allow for more of a public hearing and more public input and allow for these folks to have a little bit more time to come to terms and the developer to come to terms with them. I've seen it in the whatever years I've been here. I've seen it time and time again. We've got developers who come in and they're really great about it. And they're fine taking the time to step back. Again, there's no reason to rush this. Developments in Layton take years. Developers have come to me repeatedly and said, it's so easy to do developments in your city. And if you mess that up for me, I'll smack you around. But there's no rush here. So I make a substitute motion that we table the item.
Okay.
This specific item.
Do we have a second for that?
I'll second.
Okay. It's been motioned by Councilmember Adams that we table this item, seconded by Councilmember Barber. We will take a vote on this. Councilmember DeCare.
Nay.
I have a comment.
Comment?
My comment was
So sorry.
just to acknowledge that there has been a lot of great engagement with the community. I don't want to feel like that hasn't happened, but I think it would be great to have additional till our next meeting, whenever that is.
Oh, thank you. So Councilmember DeCare.
Nay.
Your motion. We're voting on your motion.
Aye.
Okay.
Nay.
Nay.
Okay. Motion fails 3-2. All right. Going back to the original motion to approve the preliminary plat.
Kind of skipped over Michelle's vote. Could we give her the respect of?
Oh, I am so sorry. I assumed.
Aye.
Aye. There you go. 3-2. I'm so sorry. Okay. So back to the original motion to approve preliminary plat. We'll start with Councilmember Adams.
I've never seen a protested plat happen this fast, especially with you. Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes 3-2. Thank you. All right. We are now moving on to work items. I think we're going to take a 5-minute break and then return. Thank you. right, council, please return to your seats. All right. Council needs to return to their seats. Council, please return to your seats. Okay, guys. All right, we're starting. All right, Shane, please.
Thanks, Mayor. So as we've working on the potential donation of the library, as we've have intention on a new focus, feels like a new focus on the downtown area and what that might be in the future. We've also been talking about increased needs for staff and staff space. So to that end, we solicited an RFQ to potential architects, and we went through a process. We had a little committee, just a little, mostly staff. The mayor was on that, and Councilmember Page helped us a little bit. And then we went through a process, and we chose a consultant with whom we'd like to enter into an agreement. So for me, this is step one in having a not a long discussion, could be a very short discussion, just about do we want to try and meet the needs of the city as far as space goes from now until, hopefully until build out. And we chose MHTN to present to you tonight, and we don't have an agreement or anything. This is just a work meeting. We're hoping to get from you a consensus on moving forward with an agreement, and we may go down this road and say we don't want to do anything, but we may go down this road and say we want to build the Taj Mahal, which I doubt. But everything's on the table at this point, and again, I just want to reiterate that to me this is the beginning stages of a discussion that I hope will take place over the next couple of months. So Kyle's here to answer any questions if you'd like to, but what we're looking for is just a motion to move this to an action item and bring an agreement that you could address at the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you. So Shane mentioned this, but all options are on the table, but we needed professional help to look at options and what things would cost and things of that nature. Do we have any questions for the MHTN? Kyle, is it? Is here to answer any questions.
Before
yeah.
we talk to him.
Yes, Councilmember Barber.
Ladies first.
Thank you. Before we get to the architect specifically, and I do want to see that presentation, I just want to talk about what exactly are we architecting?
Right.
What is this?
Took it out of my mouth.
Okay, good. Well,
and how much is it going to cost, and how much architecting have we already done?
All right, exactly. Good questions. All right, so as you two didn't hear because we kind of went over this while you were still talking, but so we made a decision that we were not going to tear down the old library, but also we have also decided that it's probably not suitable to put office space in. So, and that was the vote that we had month and a half, 2 months ago.
Was it? It was a vote.
It was a direction to staff. All right.
I do object to your comment, though. That was out of order. We do need to address it. It's not appropriate for you to say that. Well, since you two were over there talking and not paying attention, you're insinuating that is against code of conduct, though.
I'm sorry. Now, so what we're talking about is that we need to look at space for our city, right? So we all options are on the table, but we need some professional help. We went through an RFQ process So we had a lot of firms that were very interested in helping Kaysville, and we had a committee to interview the applicants, the potential businesses to help us. And so we came up with MHTN, who are very highly regarded in our area, and they have a lot of good ideas. In their presentation, something that really spoke to me is really making sure that we tie whatever we do to our downtown and looking at this holistically.
So why are they already
Councilmember
involved?
Adams.
Oh, I'm sorry. Why are they already involved? Why aren't we like discussing involving and putting an RFQ out for such a big item when we already have the JCRA architect study that's been done? How come we're already being, no offense, sir, why are we already being presented with him?
You know,
He's already won the bid?
Yes.
He's hired.
Well, we're going to vote on that. Shane?
I think what would the best way to answer the questions like how much will this cost, what do we want to even do?
Let's back up and talk about the question that's at hand. Are we already hired? Has this firm already won the bid? They're hired?
We have not signed any.
So yeah, we went through an RFQ process, and from the people that met with those, that interviewed those, we are recommending that we enter into a contract with MHTN, not tonight, at the next meeting, if you want to do that.
When did we initiate that?
After
we gave the library to the museum committee?
Correct. And we haven't given it to him yet, but yes.
Well, in that meeting, I
time.
recall asking you about future plans, and you didn't seem to be too worried about it. So these are your future plans. I appreciate, though, that we don't have, this should have been talked about if we're even
It's
going
been
to
in our
entertain.
weekly emails.
Well, we've already spent tens of thousands of dollars on JCRA to do these kind of things.
JRCA completed a spatial needs study as well as an assessment of building needs throughout the city back in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we've used as a basis for why we do need additional space. And this architectural firm, if we decide to do a building, even if we went with JRCA, we'd need to pay them for their architectural services to put together bid packages and to design whatever we're trying to design. So that's what these guys would help us with.
So, yeah, again, this is another third party that we're spending money on. No offense against
we definitely need an architect.
And didn't we just spend money on a third party? What was the name of the Langdon Group? And did that yield anything?
Yes, it helped us to come to the conclusion that we were not going to tear down the library, right? So we had a very robust public participation process.
Conclusion.
I would really like to answer the question you're asking. So this goes both ways. Respect. Okay?
I've learned that a simple "I'm sorry" is enough to omit the error. That's what you did. So I'm following you now.
Okay, so we are going, I feel that you are unhappy that we are paying for services, is that correct? We have not entered into a contract yet.
It's really something we as a council should be able to put our heads together and do.
Right. You know, I had a way to describe this. We really... Choosing an architect is kind of like choosing a hairdresser. You would absolutely not cut your own hair, okay? An architect is going to listen to what we want and what we think would look nice, but they're also going to say, oh, no, honey, that is not going to work for you, right? We actually do need professionals to help us with this. We cannot cobble this together by ourselves. All right. So I think we've had... expression of concern about hiring somebody to help us with this, and comments generally on the idea of hiring an architect. Anybody else concerned about hiring an architect to help us navigate how to add space to our building? Councilmember DeCare.
So I guess as a point of clarification then, so in the staff report before me here, I see that in 2015, Kaysville City commissioned a spatial needs assessment from architectural firm JRCA, right?
Correct.
That was 3 years ago. I'm assuming that that spatial needs assessment is wrapped up and done and over. It's been presented to us. I'm assuming, too, that JRCA is no longer on our payroll and they were paid for their services, and that's it.
Correct, and they applied to do this, applied as part of this RFQ as well. They were one of the firms that we evaluated, and they also were the architectural firm on the police station.
Right.
Just so you know.
Okay. Right. I knew that actually.
Okay.
So okay. Okay. So then now moving forward, we have presented before us this evening a new architectural firm. What was it?
MHTN.
MHTN. That we are looking at putting on contract to help us design moving forward with new office space, a potential redesign of this building or an addition or something along those lines, all of which is independent and separate from the spatial needs assessment that happened 3 years ago.
Correct. We're kind of using that spatial needs assessment as a motivator to know what we need, what we want for the future.
Okay, that's okay. I'm clear.
We'll definitely reference that a great deal in whatever process we try to follow to meet our spatial needs.
Right. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I do want to, as I mentioned, all options are on the table. We have not decided. I think when I was speaking to Councilmember Barber the other day, we haven't decided if we're going to raise this building to the ground and build new, or if we're going to just retrofit, or none of that. No decisions have been made. We just know that we need to add space. So that's why we need some help. They are going strength that they really showed is they had an expertise with working around currently working spaces. So being able to shift people over here so we can add over here, which really I thought was important when we're looking at this space. And visioning, they mentioned visioning. Yes, Councilmember Takara.
So to Councilmember Adams' point, and just this is for city staff. So I mean, just a ballpark. I mean, an educated guess. We've all been in this for a while and stuff. But what, maybe not with MHTN specific, but like, so we do decide to hire an architectural firm to help us not cut our own hair, to help us with something that we do not have expertise on. What is a ballpark cost of something like that look like?
Generally accepted architectural fees would be anywhere between 6 and probably 8% for whatever size of building we're doing or whatever size of project we're doing. That can certainly vary depending on how complex it gets. It can be more. It maybe it could be a little bit less than that. So if we decide to renovate this building and it's going to cost us $3 million, let's say it's 8%, we're talking about $240,000, I think. Never do math in public. So I think it's between 6 and 8%, and that would, there's a lot of, there could be construction management services in that.
Sure.
There could be
there's variables,
yes.
I understand that.
But that's a ballpark.
Yeah. That does seem exorbitant. I mean, $250,000 to help us. But,
there is you're probably familiar with the DFCM. It's a state, I don't know, Division of Capital Facilities Management. It's a guideline, so you can look at the state DFCM and see what architectural service, any service, civil engineering, any service should cost, and you can kind of reference it that way, so that we could look at that first before we.
Well, and it's not just like this is conducive to Kaysville City, where we're going to get jobbed for 8%. I mean, this is this is an industry standard.
Sure. Exactly.
So, right.
And also, we can pay them an hourly fee for 2 months and decide that we don't want to do any of this, and we can say thank you, and they will be on their way. And it would be, of course, much less than that. So,
thank you.
Can we back up on
Councilmember
the
Adams.
$250,000 mark? What was that?
He was estimating.
That's the estimate?
Councilmember Barber.
That's your estimate?
My estimate of what?
The $250,000 figure?
Based on his numbers.
Shane was estimating on an estimate.
Right. Never do math in public, but that's what his number was. At the high
end.
Right, at the high end.
To help us figure out what we want to do.
And design the building. All right. But that's about industry standard.
Irrelevant.
Okay.
Industry standards should not, we shouldn't just go with the flow. We went with the flow on the purchase of our excavator, and I had two.
That's
All
irrelevant.
right. All right. Let's stay on topic. All right. Councilmember Carter. Okay, do you know what? Stop. This is
same argument then.
Stop.
Oh,
this
I'm
is
sorry.
Stop.
It's all better now.
Please.
It's all better now.
All right. All of us, please, let's revert to our rules, and they are our rules, which were voted on in 2017.
And the leader honors them.
You may be excused if you will not zip it. All right? Please.
You have
you
don't have the right to do that.
When we have strong feelings, we really need to stick to our rules so that we can get through the work that we have in front of us in a civilized manner.
You set the pace of breaking the rules. So acknowledge yourself. Deep breath. Good job.
Shane? What would you recommend? What else do we need to do
I hope
here?
someone could make a motion to move this to an action item. That's what we'd like to see happen.
I have additional comments.
All right. Councilmember Barber, what comments do you
So I'm sure I'm really looking forward to seeing what MHTN has to present, or I wish I would have been able to see that. I think that'd be really helpful for us to visualize what this is going for. I think we started a really good interaction with the community about what we do and how we deal with our space needs, how we meet our downtown, what we do with the library. And I really like the momentum that was there, and I want to keep that. This feels a little fast.
Kyle, could you come talk about public outreach that your company does?
Kyle Taft with the MHTN Architects. One of the things that we do is public outreach. We feel it's very important for community building. We understand that people have very definite feelings about what needs to be done. Obviously, tonight we saw that, a lot of very interested community members. But it's important to include those community members in any process that takes place regarding a city facility that's going to be built. So our hope is to reach out and invite the community members to take part in the process. The initial step that we would take is a project visioning effort where we would get together with the key stakeholders. I assume that the council would be invited as part of that staff would be invited as part of that, and we would go over what you think your needs are, what you want to see in a project to either expand the existing city facility here, the municipal building, or, as Mayor Witt suggested, a possibility is to scrape it and build new. But we would help you understand what the implications are with that. Once we have a vision in place and know what you want, we would also look at the costs of that. We know approximately, we've been told, I don't know that we know for sure, but we've been told and understand that it's been suggested that 10,000 square feet of additional space is needed to appropriately house the functions of the city employees. So we would look at, can that be done by adding on to the building and remodeling the existing spaces, and what would the costs be for that, and what would the cost be for building new? So we would create some concepts based on your vision, and concepts are very preliminary plans and massing models to be able to understand what would be needed. Then we would get a conceptual cost estimate for that. It's not a takeoff cost estimate. I'm sure many of you have built facilities in the past where you actually take off every item of the building. Rather, we have a cost estimator on our staff who is very experienced with conceptual phase cost estimating, and he can talk to us about what the costs would be. We think it's going to be very important for the council and the city to understand what those costs could be before making a decision. We don't want to get you into a situation where you wouldn't have the funds available to complete the project. That's just not appropriate. So we would help you with that. Then we would come back and once that decision has been made, we would do more refined conceptual drawings of how the building could be, whether new or expanded, and just work with that. And as we develop, okay, I'm getting to the point where we're doing community outreach. As we get to that point, we would want to include community members to come in and get their ideas on what we've done. And have their input. A lot of times they will have some very good suggestions as to where the direction might go for this facility. And one thing we talked about in our interview the other day was you're also talking about making improvements and significant revitalization, if you will, of Main Street and what's going on here right next to this facility. How will that revitalization of Main Street tie into the building? And how do they reinforce each other and work with each other? And so we would bring the community in to suggest several possibilities and get the community's feedback on which possibility, which concept is best in line with the city needs and what they think. So that's maybe too much, but that's kind of where we're going on things.
All right, thanks, Kyle.
Sure.
Any follow-up, Councilmember Barber?
So where is your firm located?
Salt Lake City.
Okay. And have you done municipality projects like this?
Yes, we have. We've done projects in communities along the Wasatch Front, from Saratoga Springs to West Bountiful, Sandy City, Riverton. Another project that we did locally here is the Botanical Center Master Plan for Utah State University. We did a similar outreach with community members. We did some business-to-business partnering with nurserymen and their business interests related to that. You know, those are the kinds of things that we do.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions for Kyle? No? All right. All right. So I guess what we're looking for is, do you feel comfortable to move forward with putting this on the action agenda for next time? Councilmember Garn.
Well, I think I do, because it's limited. You know, we're not limiting public input at all by merely moving forward with the architectural firm to begin that very process of design and including the community. So for that reason, I'd make a motion to move the proposal forward to a action item.
Okay. Second, anyone?
I'll second that under the same pretense that we're not committing to anything yet, and like I said, we can get public involvement, public input, and I mean, this is the next logical step to move it to an action item, and from there, you know, we see where it goes and see what happens. So.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved by Councilmember Garn, seconded by Councilmember DeCare. Any comments? Any comments? Councilmember Page.
No, I'd just like to say, I think the important thing that we can't have this discussion. First of all, we have a great need in this city for space, and in fact, this discussion should have took place quite a while ago. It has. And so I think it's time to move on that thing. So I think but we can't have that discussion unless we know what we're talking about. And so I think this gives us that opportunity. So I think it's important.
All right, Councilmember Garn.
So just a comment. I think, you know, I guess I've been here for most of the discussion of what to do with the old library. I just have sort of one question, comment, I guess, and that is that the spatial needs study, obviously some of that design work, initial design work that was done is not really relevant at this point because we're not going to use the library for office space or replace that, and it's going to a different purpose. So we need to do a little retooling there, but wasn't there some, or I don't want to load the question, was there some benefit from the spatial needs study because it gave us an idea how much additional square footage we need for future city use?
Absolutely, and that's the number we shared with the potential consultants, and we shared the study. They all had a copy of the original study if they wanted to look at it, but we did make the same comment you just made, which is don't pay much attention to having the LeConte Stewart Art Gallery in the City Hall, and the way that things were repurposed is probably not the direction we're going to go, even though everything's still on the table. But we did point to that spatial needs study and try to give them a sense of what we were looking for.
Yeah, thank you. And I was, as much as, my mom was an artist, as much as I like museums, and maybe because I'm in that baby boomer demographic, hopefully the younger generation too still loves museums. But, that was a great thing but I was focusing on, our budget and what does the city need and how can we address that need as efficiently and effectively as possible. And but once we had the solution where we kind of moved the library to the museum committee, I feel really good about that because we still have a lot of options to take care of the city's needs, and we're also, hopefully they'll be very successful and we'll have a beautiful museum and an art gallery right there in the square. But the only other thing I would add is I do think it's really important to involve the community and be a little creative, because maybe we can do something that isn't just that is not necessarily more expensive, but the way we design it to take care of city needs is conducive to continuing to develop and have Main Street Kaysville a place where people want to come.
Absolutely, yeah. And that was what was very, Lyle was on the committee, and that was very energizing to me, seeing a lot of the creativity that MHTN brought to the table, and really looking at how do we make this area the heart of the community again, and really being open to working not only with staff and council but public as well to come up with something really creative. And I really feel that as we go through this process, we're going to come up with something that we maybe haven't even thought of yet. So really am excited about it. Any other comments before we vote? Councilmember Adams.
This is the biggest deja vu agenda item I've ever had. That's the exact same comments we made about Langdon Group. I mean, yeah, we're just going down the road again.
Do you have an alternate plan? That's what I'm not hearing.
Use the space you have.
Okay.
You have space in the police station.
Okay.
There's space there. Use that.
It's behind secure doors.
Put the council chambers over there in their big meeting. Let us meet there. Give this room to this building, and let them come in here and have all their officing in here. And those of us who use this building twice every month, we go over there.
Okay,
because
so that's your solution.
I've seen more money spent in the last 11 months, and more fees put out there. If you're going down the road, we know you're going down the road to trying to build a building. Let's just put it out there. I tried to get you to put it out there on the library discussion, which you wouldn't then either. But that's the direction you're trying to lead into, is to build a brand new building, and you think that's going to revitalize downtown Kaysville. We can't, government will never revitalize anything. The people will have to come in and revitalize it themselves. We've got Farmington to the south and Layton to the north. We've really missed the window of great opportunity for big commercial expansion. But we could meet over there in their chambers, in their big room, and staff can have this. But to go turn around to the citizenry, especially after we saw happen here tonight, and say, oh, we're going to build another $3, $4, $5 million building again. I don't know how much the city's going to bear.
Thank you. Councilmember Gurn.
So this is, it's funny, because as I listen to Councilmember Adams talk and other members of the community. You can't
comment on my words. It's against code.
No.
I object.
Oh, no. And other members of the community who are very, conservative, And I think of myself as very conservative fiscally as well. But sometimes it's interesting. The other problem I have is being an accountant, so I'm always like running the numbers. And I think the thing that's interesting with the police station is that, even though it was, I believe it was $5 million, if I'm not mistaken, but for the police station. But if you take that over, let's assume conservatively that maybe there's a 50-year life, although maybe it goes 75 or whatever. And if you extrapolate those costs out, first of all, it's much more efficient than the old building. This building has very antiquated, you could redo HVAC, but it's the whole building, it's an organic thing, but the cost savings over that 50 years of a more energy efficient building with the heat pump. But even if you just take the costs of the building, the capital one-time costs, all costs really are variable because eventually the building's going to wear out and need to be updated or replaced or taken care of, maintained. But still, it's a much longer period of time. So we call those in accounting fixed costs. So if you take those fixed costs and you divide it over the 50 years, and I'm shooting from the hip here, but when I did the calculation, I believe I'm right, it's like about 3% of the budget every year over that 50 years of the police department budget. So in other words, the other 97% is, personnel costs, labor, if you will. And it sort of, for me, puts the building cost in perspective to have that kind of a modern tool. And, in the case of the police station, you had something the size of an average Kaysville home, for a town of 33,000 people. And so that clearly needed to be updated. And, so I feel really good about those. Even being a conservative, I think it's the conservative thing to do. So it's a little different way to look at it if you span that decision out over a 50-year period. Same thing with roads. You spend a little bit on maintenance, and you save big dollars down the road if you're thinking down the road instead of just, we're spending money in the moment. And I don't mean to denigrate anyone else because, I take spending money very seriously. It's just a thing that if you look to the long term, sometimes what looks like you're being penny wise is actually pound foolish.
Thank you. All right, I think we've had enough comments. Let's vote on this. The motion is to move it to the action.
Can I make one more comment?
Yes, please.
I think this is fantastic. When you say architect, I get it, I'm a designer. It's lots of different, you don't know exactly what that means. Are you coming in and are you actually just going to come up with a plan? So it's good to hear the community engagement part of architecting. That's really helpful. I appreciate it. I personally would love to see this come back as another work item and talk more about how we go about this, what the costs are going to be for this architectural firm, and because I feel like we'll have the public's attention this week. One more week of work item, I think would be great, and then if we so want, we can move it to action.
Do you want to make a substitute motion?
Yes, I would. So I'd make a substitute motion that we would bring this item back to work item at our next council meeting.
Okay. Any second?
Second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Barber that we bring it back as work item once again, and seconded by Councilmember Adams. Councilmember Page.
Nay.
Nay.
Aye.
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 All right, motion passes 3-2. All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Taft, for being here.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to city policy discussion, sidewalk payments for residents. Josh Belknap.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Okay, so tonight, before you, we are coming with kind of a proposed approach to an issue here in Kaysville City. Let's see here. Sorry. Load the slides here. But while Lyle is loading those, giving a scope of the issue pertaining to sidewalk, and not just sidewalk, but other improvements, curb, gutter, sidewalk. The desire of Kaysville City Public Works is to see those improvements on all city streets where practical. So reasonings for that, thanks Shane, are various, but curb and gutter, there are aesthetic values, but it provides a functional value, prolonging asphalt life, assisting with drainage, assisting with traffic flows, safer routes for pedestrians, cyclists, vehicles, etc. And then, as I mentioned, an aesthetic value. Gordon, maybe advance there. So currently the situation in Kaysville City, we find ourselves with close to 4 miles of public road that is missing curb. Might be doing something wrong here, sorry. Nearly 6 miles of public roads that are missing sidewalks. We have difficulties that factor into that, right-of-way acquisition, construction easements, impacts to neighboring properties. I live in a location on Sunset Drive where I have, this is fun, sorry. I have curb and gutter in front of my home, but I don't have sidewalk. So there's a lot of places, especially on the west side of Kaysville, where that is the case. As I said, we would like to see an approach, a uniform approach of how do we tackle that problem, and how do we move forward and kind of set a precedent and treat, this scenario the same as we would treat another scenario that is similar in scope. So those scenarios, there we go, thank you. We feel like we've captured almost all of the different scenarios, but there, I'm sure, is going to be some from time to time that don't fall in these categories. First category, agreements in place. So those are deferral agreements, and you see that in various places, more so in West Kaysville, where previous property owners or developers made an agreement with the city saying, look, we don't want to put this in right now, but we will make an agreement with the city to install that at a later date. So this scenario, there is an agreement in place on a property, but the city already has the right-of-way. Our proposal for the funding mechanism is that cost for curb, gutter, sidewalk, whatever the case may be, 65% of that to be borne by the owner. As many of these deferral agreements are different from each other, but some of them are spelling out amounts. We feel like we can streamline that by bearing 35% of the cost, as long as property owners are willing to donate temporary construction easements, and we're limiting the work done restoring things like landscaping to, like we did on Shepherd Lane recently. We're going to bring in topsoil and we're going to help grade that, and then leave those residents responsible for going further than that. In here, in all of these scenarios, we've included, what do we do if we're running into a brick wall, especially in situations where we have agreements in place. They carry with those properties. If the owner refuses in this case, the option, which I do not love, but how do we move forward? How do we tackle the problem? We've got to do something. If they're refusing, although they have an agreement and we have the right-of-way, we do the project and we can lien the property if needed. Second scenario, agreement in place again, but the city doesn't have the right-of-way at this time. That funding mechanism would be 50% owner, 50% city, if, again, those right-of-way and easements will be donated. If the owner refuses, we can try and acquire the right-of-way. You can look at leaning the property, including right-of-way cost. In this scenario, due to property impact, if we're getting people to donate right-of-way, which is a significant cost, restore the property to as good condition. 3, no agreement in place. So the city doesn't have an agreement with the property owner or with a development, but the city does have the right-of-way. Funding is split 50-50, and since we already have that right-of-way to move forward, we still would like to share that cost. If the owner refuses, perhaps we're just doing curb only if we've got enough right-of-way for just curb, or we might be in a scenario where we're forced to leave a property out of a project, which is very much not ideal. Property impact here would be bringing in topsoil again and allowing the homeowner to see to their own landscaping. Continued here. Oh, thanks for that. No agreement in place. City needs right-of-way. Funding mechanism would be city covering 100% if the owner will donate the right-of-way and easements and agree to this work happening. No agreement in place there being the key. Landscaping, again, there, due to offsetting the exorbitant costs of right-of-way acquisition, restored to as good condition. If owner refuses, leave the property out of the project. Number 5. So 1 through 4 are kind of the general that are going to cover most properties that we come in contact with. Number 5 can apply to various combinations of 1 through 4, but these are homes largely considered that have 150 to 200 feet of frontage in front of their home. We consider that that could be considered developable. The key with developable properties is if the city is coming in and, say it's number 4, no agreement in place, city needs a right-of-way. The city has paid 100% of the proceeds to put those improvements in, and then if a property owner turns around shortly thereafter and develops their property or sells it to someone who then develops it, it seems like that's a cost that should probably be borne by the development. So I believe there are provisions within ordinance that can be put into place where we're saying, well, if that's within 10 years, we would like those costs refunded back to the city and have that, again, be borne by the developer.
Josh, can I ask a question on that?
Yeah, please.
So is this the developable properties only if someone has the 150 linear feet and their... The developable property, we're not so much worried about what is termed a developable property, just putting that in there for a footnote more so. We're concerned of just what happens in the future. If the city is expending funds to help a project move forward and then a property develops where typically that would be borne, those costs would be borne by the development, we want to then approach that and say, hey, as part of the agreement that we're going to have with these property owners as these projects go into place, within a certain time frame, we're proposing 10 years, we're going to want to look at recouping those costs.
Why aren't we just having those property owners pay for it?
There's several reasons, one of which is just we've got an issue and we want the issue addressed.
Why are they in the 50% category, or
sorry, what was that again?
Why are we bearing 100% of their burden? 150 feet or more.
Mm-hmm.
Why would we pay for all of that? Just because it's 150 feet or more, quote unquote, developable.
So again, developable doesn't apply to anything other than down the road within 10 years you've developed. If the city did expend funds previously for those improvements, we want to see those monies come back. So we're not necessarily saying you're a developable property or you're not. that's irrelevant to
So
us.
if we decide that Webb Lane, it was just that north side of Webb Lane is just unacceptable, we've got to put in sidewalk, we cannot wait another second for the developer to come in, we could go put that in at our expense, and we would expect the developer to pay us back those funds when they develop.
Okay, and I envision, that's a good example if you're talking a huge long stretch. I envision a piece that's 180 feet long and like on Sunset Drive,
Like my home.
Sure, good example. Or I envision Burton Lane, where just 3 years ago we went down this road and we made all those owners pay 100%. So sorry that Michelle kind of cracked open the voices up here. I was trying to wait over here. I'm not shaming you at all. I'm just.
Oh yes, you are.
You just kind of
feeling
got the voices going. But yeah, I'm gonna just hold back and let you, so I don't interrupt your flow.
So again, I think the topic of developable properties is kind of taking us into the weeds. The important item here under developable properties is if, and that emphasis on if the city is expending funds on something, not saying that they will, whether it's a developable property or not, but if the city spends money on a project and that property comes in and subdivides a lot. So if I were to subdivide my property on Sunset Drive, the city then has recourse to say, hey, we want our money back. I'd say, okay, that's the agreement that we entered into. So
I think really that's really hard to enforce. I kind of like the concept. It's hard to enforce though. Who's keeping track? Who's watching? I think the easiest thing is just to lien their property, and then if it does exchange hands, that lien has to be dealt with.
Yeah, that's definitely an option as we've addressed in some of these scenarios. But if we can have an agreement that carries with the property, like many of these deferral agreements carry with the property, they're recorded with the county. It's not very difficult to track and enforce. As we've talked with legal here, that if it's very clear, it's with the property and not with the owner, the agreement, then it's fairly easy to track and enforce.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question, but I think I'm gonna hold on to it until after you're.
Okay. So let's see, where did I leave off here? Number 6. So again, we want to incentivize this work to be done. This isn't something that we want to drag out any longer than it has to. So we want to incentivize people to come to us and say, hey, you know what? City, you guys don't have an agreement with me. You don't have right of way, whatever the case may be, but we want this. So how do we incentivize people to do that, to take the initiative? Next council meeting will be coming back to City Council to present on a criteria that we're developing where city staff can go out to every location that doesn't have full improvements. And we have a ranking scoring criteria where they input data that's on an iPad form. And depending on the input, it ranks that location as a project. This is priority number 1. And there are various things that factor into that we'll be talking about next time. But if somebody is initiating this, that's going to change their scoring factor of, well, maybe you were here and now you're moving up one spot, or it could be a couple spots. I don't know, whatever the case may be. But that's the incentive, is you want it done. You're now going to be able to see that done sooner as funds are available, whether that's owner or city funds, whatever the case may be. So yeah, essentially it results in projects being done faster. It's easier to work with individuals that want that coming. So
can I ask a question, Josh?
Yeah.
It's just really burning. It's like, I get the feel of this. Like if you've got a property that's you've got a long roadway that's missing 1 or 2 pieces, that seems like okay, maybe, but this seems like a ton of work and a ton of filtering and a ton of arbitrary judging on someone's part. Well, you're this, this, and this. Like you do a project like Sunset Drive, the elephant in the room, the elephant in the city, and it's just we're doing it this way. Boom. To have, here's 4 options and categories you fall into. In Burton Lane, it was very simple.
Yeah,
Just
so,
pop
yeah.
the curb and gutter, 100%.
Simple there because they had agreements in place with many of those
No, they
property
didn't.
owners.
No.
They did with some,
Okay.
but not all.
Yes, some had none,
Yeah.
and everybody, through collaboration, was like, this is the right way to do it, and we get it, and they paid for it. It seems like a lot of work for your department to go out and handle these negotiations with people one-on-one.
Yeah, so we try and keep consistency as we go and interact with people. Consistency is, like we'll talk about next council meeting, as we're ranking and scoring these. There is work, but as we've looked at this as city staff, we feel like what is the issue? We need to fill in these gaps. What is the fastest and most equitable way to get there? We feel like this is that solution.
I just think you have too many options.
I think next week we'll answer a lot of those questions too.
Yeah,
I'm talking to you. The discussion.
definitely. And I wouldn't so much term them as options as they are. This is what the property falls
Criteria,
into. We're not necessarily giving you the option of what exactly do you want to pay. It's here's the policy set forth and established. This is what your property falls into.
How do you answer to the people
Actually,
who paid
hold on.
100%?
Sorry, lots of people want to talk, so I'm going to go with Stroh.
Actually, Councilmember Page was good.
Page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question. I agree with Council Adams. This is too complicated. I mean, we got to do the KISS approach here. I guess my big concern is have we looked at what other cities are doing on this?
Yeah, so we've talked fairly consistently with Farmington City, and especially taking into consideration their experience with Farmington High School. It was a very ugly, long, drawn-out process, over 2 years in the making for what could essentially be a simple project. Because it was
$50,000.
Well, because they didn't have a policy like this.
Let me finish my
guys,
deal here.
Let's let Councilmember Page go.
Well, the reason was they ripped the people off. I mean, and they paid the price. But when it come down to it, the people still paid.
Correct, and that's what we're hoping to see here is collaboration between resident and collaboration between the city leads to not only is the project not going to get mired in delays that are costly to time and money, but we're seeing the results exponentially faster.
Okay.
Finish.
Yes, and then we'll go to Councilmember DeCare.
Just a follow up. The concern that I have is we got to be consistent, and that's a big concern when we have agreements with some people, and then other ones we don't have agreements with, and that's a bad deal. But on the other hand, I don't think we want to have that put out there that, hey, if you make a big enough stink, we're going to do it for you for free. Mm-hmm. In reality, everybody that builds a lot or buys a lot here in Kaysville and builds it, they pay for the curb and gutter and the sidewalk. It's always been done that way. It just increases the cost of the lot. And I feel for some people that's been on the road forever and it's not there. But in reality, to me, a simple approach would be, you know what, you need to pay for it, but we're going to help you out if you can't do it. But down the road, we need to be reimbursed. And yeah. I just think that, and I don't like the idea at all of skipping areas. That's just nuts to me. Mm-hmm. Let's get her done, and the people need to be paying. That's just the way it is.
I agree. As I think about the property that I live at, in 2001 when that street was redone. Several residents, including my family, went to the city and said, "Hey, we'd like this." That they granted the right of way to the city. It was a 70-30 cost split at that point. So I think that's one of the issues is there isn't a lot of consistency throughout time. At one point it's treated this way, at one point it's 100%, like Burton Lane. We want to establish the consistency. What is the best option that we see as consistency, and this is what we are proposing here tonight, is whatever was done in the past, that is in the past. What is the best way to move forward and be uniform as we do so?
And Councilmember Page, it's easier for us to tell someone they have to pay when we have the right of way. Or, sometimes these things are, correct. When we want something from them, it's harder to say, you need to pay, and by the way, give us the the right-of-way. So sometimes it depends on what the scenario is.
You know, and I agree with that approach, but, you know, and I mean, that's something we need to look at.
And as we've looked here previous, we're definitely not shying away from the hard decisions and the tough talks that have to be had of, you know, do we start looking at leaning properties? If something just isn't working and we need to move forward and we have that ability to move forward, then we exercise that as an option. And I see that that is what the option is, you know, do we have cooperation? If not, then this is the option that we have. And again, this is our recommendation, but I definitely am here not presenting an action item or consent item. It's a work item. We're here to get input and continue to look at this. How do we tackle this monster? The elephant in the room, I think, is all over Kaysville City, especially on the west side. So.
Okay, Councilmember DeCare.
Yeah, it's all over the city to the tune of 4 miles, essentially, that's scattered, you know, all across the city.
Which is like mostly Shepherd.
It's not your time.
Yeah, that's the majority of it.
Crestwood, Second North, yeah.
Yeah, so help me understand. So, curb, gutter, and sidewalk. Your average frontage on a home in Kaysville is like, what, 120, 180?
Between 100 and 150,
yeah,
I think,
whatever,
is
somewhere
what
there,
we looked
right?
at.
What kind of cost is that? I mean, give me a number.
So it can vary.
18-inch gutter, you know.
Yeah, so depending on what construction costs look like, what we're getting as a bid from a contractor, that could be for that frontage. That could be up to $6,000, $6,500 for curb, gutter, and sidewalk on a lot of the numbers that we're seeing recently.
On how many feet?
100 feet.
On the average, yeah, you know.
A curb gutter, $16 to $20 a foot. Okay. Sidewalk,
yeah,
$6-7 a
foot. The lowest that we're seeing, it ranges anywhere from $20 to $33, depending on when we're trying to get those numbers. So, yeah, there's
right in the middle, didn't I, Stroh?
There's a lot that goes in there, but
Councilmember Barber, did you have a question?
I do, but I want you to get through the rest of your presentation. Then I'll.
Yeah. So
sorry, I did have.
Councilmember Garn.
So, the one comment I don't disagree with Councilmember Page. And everyone, I think, would agree that it would be great to have a consistent policy, but I think it's important to make a distinction here between a design that you're currently giving a proposal that is complicated, which I don't think is the case. The history of the way these agreements have been made in the past is what's complicated. Right. So that's many different councils over many different years, probably 100 years of development, you know, you could argue. So what I have a problem with, though, and maybe I could be persuaded otherwise, but I just see so many times at the federal, state, and even local level when government, big coercive government, comes in and says, well, you never have an agreement, but we've decided we want sidewalk. And so even though there was no agreement in place whatsoever, we're going to force you, put a lien on, well, lien I guess I could see because it's a public use, but require someone to pay. My opinion right now is if there was never any agreement and the city, as much as I want sidewalk everywhere, and I agree I don't want the places, I don't think you can come into somebody that, in a home that's been there 80 years and saying all of a sudden you got to pay for sidewalk and curb and gutter when that was not, the case way back when. So I actually support dividing these out into different segments depending on the responsibility that the resident already has. I think it's capricious of government to go back and say, well, you never had to pay we never had to pay for this before, but all of a sudden, and there's exceptions to that. But I think in this case, maybe I could be persuaded otherwise, but I just think it's an overreach of government to do that. But.
Okay. Councilmember Adams, and then did you want to ask your question? We'll let Josh finish after Councilmember Adams.
There just seems to be a lot of room for subjectivity in so many options. I'm personally overwhelmed with them, and that's just where I sit. There could be an appeals body, which would be us, for certain scenarios. But the irony is, on the Burton Lane project, I worked closely with those folks, held open houses in their backyards. They were reluctant in the beginning. But when they understood and when they thought through it for themselves individually, they came back and they were asking this council to revamp the project. The project was already underway, but they were asking them, please stop. No, design curb and gutter in it, we'll pay. You know, and so how do you go back to those folks just a few years ago and be like, hey, people are paying 50% now? How do you go back to the folks that have liens on their properties right now, which I'm told for years now by Andy that there are many of those? And then when I ask about like new homes being built on Sunset Drive just recently, and there's no curb and gutter put in, I said, what's going on with that? Oh, we took money in. So evidently we have money for some too. Right. Do we go back and give 50% back to those folks now?
Again, going back,
project hasn't been fulfilled. So where's their? You see what I'm saying? I just think there needs to be a policy of, hey, this is how we're going to move forward. And like you take Sunset Drive, you hold an open house. You do the same thing we did on Burton Lane. And I'm telling you right now, Shepherd and Sunset Drive, people are going to jump for joy. And you might have neighbors say, I'll pay for his curb and gutter.
Yeah. So we hope that people are feeling excited to do this. It is hard to look at a property in one place that paid 60 or 70 or 80 or 90 or 100% for something, where are they the exact same as a property in another part of town? Did they both have agreements? Did they both have right-of-way that needed to be acquired? I don't think you can treat one property the same as another if they aren't the same in the same scenario, which is the reasoning for.
Some were former county, some had liens.
And again, that's a good example of a project where the city actually did assist with the cost burden of the design, paying for the design element of the curb and gutter, whereas normally it would be resident, go get this done. You've got to get, just like a developer would have to do, get the design done, get the survey done, get that laid out, pay for those items. That's a cost being borne by the city. Again, there hasn't been any consistency previously, and we're trying to establish that.
If we're going to do Sunset Drive, we're designing it. That's just
Correct.
going to happen.
Right.
We're expecting you to pay for curb, gutter, and sidewalk. Now, sidewalk, the other argument is there are places where it's not mandatory. Yours, since you brought your house up, yours is in dire need. You know, the four homes.
I would jump for joy for sidewalk.
I mean, we got to think about the critical paths for schools and stuff like that. But you don't always have to put the sidewalk in. The curb and gutter, you don't always have to. It's a great benefit. And then there's other scenarios. What about folks who have encroached into our right-of-way just recently with wrought iron fences? I think, you know what, I'm going to leave it there. But that's only 7 feet behind curb and gutter. It's in the vicinity of your home. Who's policing these things? Why are we allowing people to put improvements in these right-of-ways? So that's a little off topic. We'll come back to it. But
if I could interrupt, we're going to need to extend our meeting. So I would entertain a motion to extend the meeting to the end of our agenda. Anyone?
I'll motion to extend the meeting.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Adams, seconded by Councilmember Barber. Councilmember Garn.
Aye.
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 All right, thank you. Motion passes 5-0. All right. Carry on?
Yes. Trying to see where we left off here. Item 7. So long frontages, corner lots, looking at the feasibility of this, owner cost not to exceed 1.5 times the average for other properties within the project phasing. So if you got a corner lot where you've got 600-700 feet of frontage, which we've looked at a property recently, whereas the other projects are 100 feet or so of frontage. How do we make this more palatable? How do we move this forward? Again, that would also have to fall within what category is it? Is it an agreement in place, not agreement in place? Do we need the right-of-way? Do we not need the right-of-way? And then factoring this in. And again, looking for feedback. And then finally, payment options. Are we accepting lump sums, which I would highly encourage a lump sum. I believe on Burton Lane and other projects we've taken multi-year payback options. So, yeah, I think that is everything.
Is that 600-foot corner, is that in West Kaysville?
Councilmember Adams.
Yes, West Kaysville.
See, and again, without really honing in on that for the to keep respect to the owner there, why wasn't that required when it was developed? Or why don't we have their money banked? Yet we have money up by Centennial from folks who just built homes banked, at least I've been told. Again,
so I've only looked at measurements on that property. I haven't looked at any of the parcel data, what's recorded with the county, but my understanding is that's a property that doesn't have an agreement, but we do have right of way. So again, it's go back to the categories, and the categories will decide how to proceed.
Councilmember Garn.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, but the problem is no one who's here in this meeting or perhaps even employed by the city was there when those decisions were made.
yes, our staff was here.
And I think also it's important to point out that if someone wanted to, so I guess all I'm saying is if you have a lien, I think you're obligated. I mean, I think that the person who has a lien pays, right? But if you don't have a lien or any kind of agreement, that's what I was speaking to. But that's not to prevent, with the Burton Lane example, that's not to prevent someone who says, hey, I will happily participate. I'm just saying the coercive nature of it, to say you must participate, is what disturbs me a little bit. But, if someone voluntarily, I don't think the city would turn them down if somebody came to you and said, hey, I'll pay for 100% of the curb and gutter and sidewalk, just put it in for me, will you? Mm-hmm. Then I think we're a go, right? So, anyway.
Anything? Okay. All right. Where are we at on this? What do you want to do? Councilmember Barber?
So I think this is the most excellent first step. Like, considering we have been all over the board on this, I've had residents so confused what's happening. I've been confused. Thank you. Like, this is the way we need to move forward. Even if every detail on there isn't right, this is excellent, because then the next council and the next staff, overturn, they won't have the same questions. We'll know where we're going. So I think this is a great process. And I really am looking forward. I know a lot about what you're presenting next week with the scoring system and that ranking system. So I think that will answer a lot of our questions. So I'm not positive because I'm not ready to move this to action. I think this needs more work. I wonder if we work on this in addition to your discussion next week. Would that be okay? I'm open to feedback, but I'm not ready to move this to action, but I'm ready to say this is exactly what we as a council and staff should be working on. This will be a huge benefit to the city. So
I don't see how you arbitrarily
Councilmember
can tell
Adams.
someone who, doesn't have an agreement or does have an agreement. Well, if they have an agreement or a lien in place, then they ought to be paying 100%. We've at least got to try and honor our past. Just a few years ago, the first time we finally revamped a road, we told the people you ought to pay that. So people with agreements ought to be at the 100% burden then. And if you don't have an agreement, then maybe you look at those options. But how's that really fair to honor the people who have paid and who didn't have agreements?
And I'm very much here for this reason, to get this
Mayor?
feedback.
Perfect feedback.
Yes, Shane.
I just wonder if it might be helpful to take what Josh has presented, to review it on your own, and make suggestions just like Councilmember Adams just has done, and then we can refine that next time.
I think it would be, because I agree with that sentiment, but like when you and I talked, there's motivation between the 65-50 split, and I think that's because of the efficiency that could come from it. We're going to bear part of the cost of the asphalt that comes, which is not quite as expensive for the homeowner. There's different factors that went into it, so maybe we can talk about those.
Yeah, absolutely.
A little bit more about why we had the idea, not the final, but the idea of coming and partnering with residents, because like you said, also time is money.
Yeah.
So.
You're just going to run into neighbors chatting with each other after you score them, and I got this score, you got that. What? And I'm telling you, you got a cluster coming your way.
Again, I think it's difficult if you're within the same category and you've got the same conditions, then if people want to exercise that option and kind of compare cards, they can do that. But it's difficult to compare, hey, I'm in this scenario, which is not the same scenario as somebody else. To compare apples and oranges is difficult there.
But I think everybody here agrees that we need something consistent that we move forward with, and that's exactly what you tried to do. What I hear is different ways that can be accomplished, and so please do.
Let's work on it.
Yeah,
Next
please
2 weeks.
write up some ideas of what suggestions you would have for Josh on how to do that. I think you guys have probably more expertise in this area, and you might have.
Well, I've paid for plenty of them.
Yeah. So please do send an email or talk to Josh about how.
Can we have him send us an email of all those proposals?
Yeah. I'm sure that you could
absolutely.
email them, right? And then go
There
through
is something
the
that
slides here
is really in lieu of what we're talking about here, and it's been on the table several times, and that people are dying to know, and I really hope you guys just back this for a minute, what's going on with Sunset Drive. Like, people are wanting to come knock your door. I'm like,
I get people that knock on my door. So
okay,
yeah.
I don't want any
We
snide.
all do.
It's really what's going on. Is it in the works for next year? Are you planning it? Are you in the design phase? What is going on? Shepherd and Sunset.
So yeah, definitely not a snide comment, just a reality. So Shepherd Lane and Sunset, we are going after all of Shepherd Lane from, I believe, near Benchland to Bear Creek. And then Sunset Drive, we're looking at getting in place everything to do improvements and repave from Flint Street to Western Drive. Again,
and that's next year?
That's next year, yeah.
Okay.
With the surplus funds that were moved from the general fund, the road fee monies. So it's a lot of work, and it's very much dependent on coordination with residents. But again, I'm very hopeful that we can make something work with people and see people come together and be excited to see these improvements come.
Yeah.
So that's
and this is a community problem looking for a community solution. So however, this piece is going to be really important, the curb gutter sidewalk, in order to be able to move forward on what you're working on. So yeah, that's really appreciate the work, and we'll continue this discussion next council meeting. Is that appropriate? And Councilmember DeCare, did you have something? Were you raising your hand?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No,
right.
I'm good.
Anything else?
No,
okay.
I'm ready to.
I think that's the best way to go about it, and I think a lot of our questions will be answered there. So
okay.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, Josh.
Hey, thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Quickly, so Bear Creek, that is.
It's on
that's
the
east of 50
side,
West, right?
Yeah.
How come?
No, Bear Creek is west.
Is it like as you go down the hill?
Yeah, so after you've gone down the hill, it's the creek there by Court Lauder's old home, the creek that runs along his backyard.
It's that new subdivision road, right there.
No, it
by
goes past there. It goes farther towards the Brewer property there on the corner of Sunset and Shepherd.
Right.
So that creek there, taking the repave project to that.
Oh, so from Fapid,
Fapid,
Land,
yeah.
all the way down to that creek.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought Bear Creek was a road. Sorry, you're talking
Yeah,
about
sorry,
Creek itself.
the actual creek, yeah.
I thought you were talking about that. Well, because Bear Creek Road is up further,
It's
right?
up a little higher, I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the actual creek,
Okay.
the water body from Fapid, Benchland down to the creek.
So in 2020, we'll go from there to Western Drive.
So yeah, there's a ton of coordination, but we are working hard
big
to
stretch. That's
bite all
further
of
than I
this
thought.
off as soon as we can.
Right.
Because that goes.
And
what we're
we
aiming
do need
for.
to mention thank you to our residents for the road fee, which is making this all possible.
We couldn't do it.
And the surplus that
And
we gave from the general fund, $1 million.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
All right. Amendment of Chapter 16-13, Retail Tobacco Specialty Business.
Keep it quick, Lyle.
This one's a lot less exciting than some of our other stuff tonight, so hopefully
Did you bring samples?
Got some dry visual text for you is all I've got. So, essentially, this is an effort in our office. A lot of credit to Henry in our front office with our business licensing staff, just being aware of what the state's done and some recent legislative updates on how they define and manage tobacco retail specialty businesses. And so we found recently that our ordinances kind of conflict with that language. This proposal is an attempt to bring those into state trumps anyway, but it confuses people when we say something different, so we want that to be consistent. And part of that proposal is we were looking at bringing those into par with each other. We reviewed it with our legal staff, and based on how we administer our licensing, felt it would be appropriate to change our process slightly that's outlined in this. Currently, that some of the falls under that, we require a BCI background check as part of their licensure. Based on the changes with the state and kind of being consistent with how we handle a convenience store or a grocery store, for example, that sells the same products, we like the consistency of not requiring backgrounds for some and not for the others. But we also liked it because other agencies are doing that already. So the health department will now be doing that portion of the review. We require a health department sign-off before we issue a license. So it just becomes redundant at that point that we're asking for the same paperwork, essentially. So that's the short and sweet of it. We're just looking to, definition-wise, bring things up to par with the state on what is retail tobacco specialty retail store, and then also to align our process with them and some updates where, again, other agencies, county health department in particulars, can take over what we've been doing previously.
Okay.
So just looking to see if we're ready to take this to an action item.
Okay. Councilmember DeCare.
You just answered my question, Lyle. That's what I was wondering what the gist of this was for this evening. It's essentially just to have a recommendation to move it to an action item and then go from there, right?
Correct. First stab at it. So if there are comments that you'd like to see changes before you see it as an action item, we'd be happy to work on it some more.
Yeah.
So was this just somebody got bored and was going through the codes, realized a misalignment, or is there a tobacco shop knocking on the door?
Well, no, so Anne Marie participates pretty heavily with our regional business license association and with the league, and she just monitors legislative action anyway, was aware of this for some time. We're just getting around to it. It's something that we've had on our radar that we've needed to update.
So there's nobody's looking to come to town then? Or?
Not that I'm aware of. And we feel comfortable, again, whether they were or not, the statute already governs how it would have actually worked out from the state's end, and so we just want to be ready to go in case somebody
Can you
comes
just
looking.
start a rumor that the old 7-Eleven's going to become a vape shop?
I think that's
there have been some rumors.
Actually,
Let's throw it out there.
Yeah, it's actually going to be, is it public?
I don't know.
Oh, it's so
permitting and
public.
such we have. It will
I
not
read on
be a tobacco
Facebook.
retail
Everyone
store.
knows.
Spice it up a little bit.
I read on Facebook that it's going to be a Verizon wireless.
store, possibly
I
selling
get
tobacco.
all my,
See, I'm not on social
I get all
media,
my
so I don't know
gospel
what
from
the heck's going on.
Facebook.
That's what I read.
I'd be happy to report to the council officially just to make sure that we've got the approval to do on that. But
Since they've been actually doing work on it, I assume that they have a building permit, and therefore it is public knowledge. It's
very likely.
So therefore,
yes.
it's
Very
Verizon
likely.
wireless.
It's an existing
ambiguous
building. It
answer.
wasn't a conditional use, so I've not personally handled much on it. So the building department, we could confirm that and then be happy to verify that with the council via email or something.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the.
One more.
Oh, go ahead.
Questioners, sorry. When I read through it, and maybe I'm wrong, but it didn't appear to me that there's anything substantive in there. So if I'm a tobacco shop owner, I'm not thinking, oh gosh, now I can run in there and start a tobacco shop, whereas before I couldn't. I mean, it has zero impact. It's just, yeah.
It's just
the
tidying up the language.
I'll make a motion that we approve the amendment of Chapter 1613, Retail Tobacco Specialty Business.
Sorry,
Second motion.
Okay.
Mayor,
yes.
we're just in a work meeting, so we can't approve this, so we just need to move it to action.
Oh,
Action.
I will make a motion that we move this amendment of Chapter 16-13 to action item next council meeting.
I cut her off. She was about to say that.
I was.
Yeah. And you seconded it, right? So it's been moved by
We're on a roll.
Councilmember Barber, seconded by Councilmember Adams. Any final comments on this? No. All right. Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion is unanimous. All right, we have call to the public. I have Dean Wall signed up, but I don't see him
bless his
here. So we'll move on. Council member reports. anything community development?
No, let's go forward.
Okay. Councilmember
Everybody follow
Garn.
pace.
No report.
Councilmember Barber.
We have our Veterans Day program this weekend.
Yes, we do.
Starting at 11 o'clock at Davis High School. And I had one other note,
Uh-huh.
if it's appropriate, just the saddened on the loss of our resident today in the accident.
All right, thank you. And Councilmember Takar, anything on youth court or
Youth
power?
court's moving along fine and dandy. Didn't meet Wednesday because it was Halloween. Next scheduled is next Wednesday. Power Commission hasn't met in quite a few months. Their meeting this month has been canceled as well. They're looking at reconvening first Tuesday in December, so we'll see if that actually stands or not. So
Okay.
that's it.
All right, thank you.
Good.
And I will mention, in regards to Power Commission, the terms are up in February of next year, so we will get a plan in place
A
to.
whole new? Everyone's
no,
term is up?
No, there's a certain proportion of them who are up, and so we will. I'll be working with Shane on developing that, but I will anticipate that we will have the application ready to go probably by the end of November, have it turned in mid-December, and then I will do interviews in December and appoint.
Stro, no sidebar conversations.
And we will do
Camera, please.
ask for ratification of those in January. So, and then I would like to entertain a motion to move to closed session after a 5-minute break.
I'll make a motion that we move
Is that
to
all right?
That's fine, but I will be pretty fast in the closed session if you don't want to take a break.
How
If
about
you're trying to get out of here.
Second that.
Okay.
Second that.
All right.
Run your breaks. Move on.
All
All
right.
right, so I'll make a motion that we move to closed session.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Third.
All right. Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you.
Shane, you're up.
Before we do this, I need to change that.
And turn off the.